And welcome to the Mike Graham Show. I'm Mike Graham, and this, of course, is the Mike Graham Show. It's 7 o'clock, and it is Wednesday, the 4th of March. As you can see from not only the clocks behind me, the international clock is also... Stop it. Sorry, the international clock is also working well. We've got lots to do this morning. Loads and loads of headlines on the front pages this morning, largely about the state of Starmer's brain, which appears to be not working terribly well. Prime Minister mocked by Trump. The Daily Mail's actually got a slightly longer version of that. A Prime Minister who Trump mocks as no Churchill and a Navy fleet stranded in port. Daily Mail's comment is, imagine if Sir Keir Starmer had been in charge when Argentina invaded the Falklands, or worse still, in 1940, when Britain stood alone against Hitler. As Trump said last night, sitting in front of a bust of our greatest Prime Minister, Starmer is no Churchill. Which is about the truest thing I think that's ever been said about Keir Starmer. For once, the US president was putting it mildly. Not content with wrecking the economy, Starmer has now wrecked Britain's relationship with our oldest ally because he's enthralled to the international lawyer class, terrified of his own left-wing MPs and desperate to appease Muslim voters. He's a national embarrassment. Last night, right, in addition to having the most embarrassing appearance in front of the House of Commons just the other day, where he was banging on about how everything that we did, we were not involved in the original strikes. I just want to make that clear. We were not involved. Yeah, you've made it clear. You keep saying it as if you're trying to appease the Muslim vote. All these wallies who seem to want to think that they're going to defend Keir Starmer basically keep saying things like, oh, well, he's doing the right thing because it's an illegal war. Well, excuse me, not one person has actually come out and said that it's an illegal war. Not one expert has said that it's an illegal war. Not one expert has said that the Americans and the Israelis are acting unlawfully, because international law is a very movable feast. It's a complete and utter sort of shambolic collection of regulations set up by a bunch of, I don't want to say the word, wallies in The Hague, right, the International Court of Justice, who seem to be completely and utterly anti-Semitic, who hate everything that Israel does, don't like Donald Trump very much, and will basically tell you, you can't do that because we say it's illegal. Same goes for the United Nations. Oh, what a surprise. The United Nations thinks that Donald Trump might be doing something a bit off the cuff and he shouldn't be doing it. These are the same people that let China do what they want, that let Russia do what they want, that let Venezuela do what they want. And whenever any Western country wants to do anything, they go, oh, no, hang on a minute, that's probably illegal. So I'm going to say this once, and I'm going to say it for all of you to listen to. Keir Starmer, while he tries to hide behind international law, has no reason to believe that what is going on currently over the skies of Iran and Tehran is illegal, because nobody said it. So Michael Ellis, the former Attorney General of this country, was on Nigel Farage's show last night on GB News, right? And he completely ripped apart Starmer's arguments about how it's illegal. Because basically you can find a lawyer that will tell you anything. If you want something to be declared illegal, then go and find a lawyer, say to them, look, this is what we'd like, see if we can draw you gently towards what it is that we want, and get them to say, yeah, you're absolutely right, that's illegal. Because anybody can do that. And that's the point. We've got a lawyer to speak to right now, Stephen Barrett. Very good morning to you, Stephen. Welcome to the big show. I don't know if you managed to see Sir Michael Ellis last night, but I happen to think he's a rather clever man. I happen to think he was a very good Attorney General. And he, by absolutely no shadow of a doubt, completely destroyed Keir Starmer's sort of legal arguments, if you like, because nobody has declared anything that the Americans have done to be in breach of international law, if there was such a thing.
Nobody has declared that except Keir Starmer.
Yeah.
And by assumption, Lord Hermer, who I describe as evil Penfold. I'm very glad to have Michael Ellis on side. I was very glad to have Suella on side yesterday. I will just work out what I think the law is, and then I tell people, and if nobody's on my side, then nobody's on my side. Yeah. This time, I'm very lucky to have a great many incredibly impressive lawyers on my side. Lord Wolfson of Tredegar is powerfully on my side. Right. And I'm very grateful for that. The Prime Minister is talking nonsense, and he does it to try and control you. It's like, to my mind, Mike, it's exactly like the accusation of racism, okay? They control you by the threat that they will call you racist if you don't do as they want. Right. And that only works because you're not a racist. Okay, and the threat that they will tell you that something is illegal only works because you are decent, law-abiding people.
Right.
That's literally the only reason it works.
Because
so
that's
it
their
doesn't.
trigger, isn't it? Because they're assuming that if you don't want to shoplift, and they tell you if you shoplift, we will arrest you, then you won't do it. Whereas if you're actually a shoplifter, you don't care.
Yeah, the bad people don't care. And we really need to get this through our heads in society, because luckily we live in Britain, and luckily Britain is full of large numbers of incredibly lovely people. But obviously we have wrong-uns here, and the wrong-uns simply don't care. The wrong-uns don't care about being called racist. The wrong-uns don't care that they're breaking the law. They're going to do what they're going to do anyway. The rest of us are fundamentally decent, and we have to stop terrorizing and bullying the good people when we've got quite a number of wrong-uns. You know, that is something we actually have to address.
Yes, I think so. Now, in order to ascribe the phrase wrong-uns to anybody in particular, I'm going to play you a quick clip here, because this, I think, sums up, there are two clips I'm going to play you, sums up the state of Keir Starmer's brain right now, right? He thinks it's important to put out TikTok videos, right, in which he portrays himself as some kind of, you know if you saw that old movie, you know, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington or whatever it is, it's a bit like that, you know, he's like, here I am in Downing Street on the phone to lots of really, really important people. Check this out. This is TikTok.
Emmanuel, Friedrich, really good to hear from you.
I think we are all concerned about what could happen within the next couple of hours or days.
We weren't involved, as we've made clear, in the strikes, although we are operating defensively in the region in relation to our assets and liabilities and allies.
I think we've completed nearly all of the regional calls, have we?
Prime Minister, how are you?
Hi. How are
These are very big decisions. And I want to hear your views, helping with the principles that we should apply as we go forward from here. Not joining the offensive.
Yeah.
This is about collective self-defence of regional allies, British civilians are now at risk.
Good.
You are going to be put through to the office of the President of Cyprus.
We're deploying a Type 45 air defence destroyer to help defend Cyprus.
I mean, apparently we're not involved in the early strikes, in case you weren't aware of that. And also, here's lots of pictures of me talking to lots of people and calling them by their first names. It's like, Dad, look, I've made it to Downing Street, and I'm talking to like world leaders and everything, and it's really great, and it's so exciting, and I've nearly finished my diary for today. And do you know what? You know, somebody made me a cup of tea, and it was really good. It's embarrassing, isn't it?
It's absolutely pathetic. And if you notice there, he was actually on hold to the President of Cyprus. The Prime Minister of Great Britain was talking to a receptionist and on hold.
Yeah, it's probably
for the President of
ringing a
Cyprus.
kebab shop in Camden Town. You know, all right, do you want hot sauce with that in it? You know, it's ridiculous. It's just so ridiculous. It's who's telling them that this is a good look?
Well, what's happened, Mike, as I suspect you know, because you and I have both lived through this, is that back in ye oldie days, and if listeners and viewers go back to sort of like 1980 or 1970s BBC, everything was terribly artificially posh and everything was terribly artificially formal.
Right.
And Tony Blair rose to power on this great wave of of the rejection of that. And it peaked with the death of Diana, Princess of Wales, where we all had to stop being terribly British and stop being formal. And we all had to suddenly become terribly informal.
Yes.
And you got the incoming Conservative Prime Minister, call me Dave, you know, and just formality went out of the window. We're now, the pendulum has now swung so far the other way that it now looks absolutely ridiculous and preposterous, childish, silly and stupid. And our Prime Minister is on hold to the President of Cyprus because this has gone on way too far. Right. I think, Mike, we need to get things like calling people Mr. and Mrs. back. I think we need to get basic manners back.
You're absolutely right. You know, one of the things that really winds me up is when you get people either in a shop or on the phone, you know, from some banking organisation or an energy company calling you mate. All right, mate.
Yeah, that's outrageous.
Go, hang on, I don't know you. You don't know me. I have no idea what you look like. Please do not call me mate.
No, and we don't need to go back to letters of formal introduction, but and I'm quite a jolly and friendly soul, but obviously I also experience appalling customer service, as literally everyone does. And if I experience it and they start calling me Steve, I will say things like, honestly, Mr. Barrett is fine.
Yes. Yes.
just to land at home,
Yeah.
you know. And I think we do need to go back to formality. I think the Prime Minister should probably behave with inherent dignity and respect. I'm not entirely sure this one can. As far as I can tell, he has some sort of humiliation fetish going on. Because let's be honest, Mike, he should have resigned a month ago over Peter Mandelson.
Yeah.
So the whole thing is a sham.
I mean, can you imagine? You must wake. I mean, we've all been through, difficult times in our lives, right? And when you're in one of those difficult places, you wake up in the morning with a sort of sense of dread hanging over you, going, how am I going to get through the day today? I mean, he must have been doing that every single day, and he's been doing it every single day for the best part of at least a year and a half, ever since it was described that he basically had his clothes bought by Lord Ali, and he had, his glasses bought by Lord Ali, and his wife was getting her underwear bought by Lord Ali. And ever since that moment, he hasn't really had a day where he's woken up thinking, this is a great day for me to be Keir Starmer, because there hasn't been one.
Well, we assume that, but that would mean he is a normal person, which is really not clear.
Yes.
The best case scenario for the Prime Minister is that he's a severely damaged individual who doesn't understand what it is to be a real boy.
Yeah.
But there are other options for the Prime Minister, which I hope are explored in due time, and I'll say no more than that.
Indeed. Well, listen, very well put, if I might say. Now, however, I'm going to show you something that you may not have seen, which is Keir Starmer at one of his most relaxed moments, right? And this is Keir Starmer actually not putting it on, and he's not actually trying to impress anybody. He's actually just being himself. And this is why I find this fascinating, because do you know where he is? He's in Westminster Hall, this is last night, holding an Iftar for the local Muslim community of London. Have a look at this.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله.
So that's him basically mingling with the sort of dignitaries at this Iftar event, which is in Westminster Hall, one of the most sacred and historic halls of British history, right? Where Cromwell spoke, where the Queen's body lay in state. He's now holding an Iftar there, and there's just one other quick clip I want to show you where he speaks. And he speaks in a way which is much more relaxed than he normally does. Have a look.
Thank you so much. While I'm here, I just want to say thank you so much for all of those involved in hosting today's event. It's obviously beautiful to see so many people here from so many different gatherings. Ramadan for us Muslims is a very special time. It's the most special time of the year, as everyone in here who is Muslim will tell you. It's a time of year that we strive to do good more than any other time of year. And that's very important to us.
Yeah, sorry, we'll find the one of him actually speaking, because that's the one we want. Because, but such a bizarre thing to do in the midst of all of the stuff that's going on. He spent the best part of the last 4 days making sure that everybody knows that we didn't take part in the bombing of Iran, but for obvious reasons, doesn't want to upset the Muslim community. But it seems like that's the only place he feels comfortable, which is I find strange.
It does. Can I also just highlight, as a same-sex attracted man, just how odd it is to have men touching each other quite so intimately in public?
Yeah.
It is rather confusing for me. And if members of, if your listeners and viewers who may well be heterosexual, if they have questions and queries about quite the level of and degree of intimacy and touching that was going on, can I give them free rein to raise those questions, because it looks odd to me?
It does. Well, I said this before, when he does that thing where people go to Downing Street, like particularly Zelensky and Macron, and he hugs them for just that little moment too long. My sort of general rule of thumb, is about a 10-second greeting to somebody from the same sex, or indeed from the opposite sex, who you're not having sex with, is probably fine. You know, anything more than 10 seconds starts to look a bit weird.
It does look a bit weird, and that might be because we're culturally British, and that might be that these are perfectly just simple cultural differences.
Yeah.
But if the Prime Minister belongs and feels more comfortable in a culture that isn't ours, then I think that is probably a problem. I think that probably is something to flag up. And I think a lot of us are coming to a head with multiculturalism and realizing it doesn't work. Multi-ethnic is absolutely fine. Nobody has a problem with that. The issue is more cultural, and some cultural differences are small and easily got past. This one is not a major thing, but it's definitely a cultural clash. Men in our culture don't do this to each other.
Right.
Why does the Prime Minister feel so comfortable doing this? Why does he prefer to be in that type of environment than in our type of environment? When I meet, it will come as, despite the fact that I am openly bisexual and same-sex attracted, Mike, when we meet, we shake hands. That's what we do. You know that,
absolutely.
And not for very long.
No, and I don't hold your hand with my other hand, and or put my hand on your arm, and you know, it's just a bit weird. You know, I think we've now finally got the clip of Starmer speaking. Watch his style here, because it's very different to what it normally is.
But on Iran, I want to make clear the UK was not involved in the offensive strikes of the US and Israel, and that remains the case. As many of you will...
Look how happy they all are that we weren't involved, right? And of course he continues, and it really annoys me, this particular thing really annoys me, he continues to say we were not involved and that remains the case. Well, yeah, because you can't change what's already happened. What do you mean it remains the case? You know, you weren't involved, point ends. That's the end. You don't have to say, that's like me saying, you know, I met Stephen Barrett once 2 years ago and that remains the case. Well, yeah, because you can't change the history that we all share, you know.
No, well, he's not very clever, and he is a very bad public speaker. But I actually think that the clap there was pathetic. I think that was basically, you know, 100 people and 2 or 3 of them clapping loudly whilst the others didn't clap at all.
Right.
And let's be I want to be absolutely honest to your listeners and viewers, Mike. Muslim Qatar has joined the war. So Muslim Qatar is involved in this conflict and in attacking Iran. Muslim Qatar stands with Israel and stands with America, as we should have done.
Yes.
We didn't, but we definitely can now. Again, I want to be absolutely clear, because he just lies about the law. We have been attacked, Mike. That is lawful justification for any response. Any response necessary to defend ourselves is now lawful. We can join the fight.
Right.
We can join up with Israel, who I think he clearly has a problem with, because he does have this nervous tick of constantly saying we weren't involved in their action. But we can join up with Israel, with America, and with Qatar, and defend ourselves against these monsters. And again, just for your listeners and viewers, I really want people to know just how monstrous this regime is. They hung a 14-year-old girl who was raped on crimes of fornication. They murdered, we think, up to 40,000 people in the past few weeks, just for protesting. This is a regime of pure evil, and we can stand. I don't care which way your sensibility is. We can stand with Israel and we can stand with Muslim Qatar against these monsters, because they are monsters and they have to go. Now, regime change is not President Trump's aim. People keep wrongly claiming this. President Trump just wants to knock out their nuclear deterrent, their nuclear possibility. And we know from the meeting that they had with the Americans that they bragged that they had the capacity to build 11 nuclear bombs in a short space of time, because that's what they were doing. They were getting themselves to the point where they could build these things. They didn't have one, so technically we haven't got one, but we can build one very rapidly. These monsters were arming, and we should have stood with America and Israel. We should now stand with America, Israel, and Qatar. I've not had time to check the news, but it's entirely possible that another Muslim nation has joined the fight against Iran, because they've all been wrongly attacked, unlawfully attacked, and now have an entirely lawful basis to do exactly what they want. We were always able to act. So the fact that he keeps bragging about his own cowardice is really just pathetic. And Mike, it's going to haunt him in the coming days, because it's going to be, first of all, I think that the Iranian regime will collapse. And I pray for that, and I pray for the people of Iran to be free. But if that happens, he's going to brag that the greatest achievement in modern times, the greatest act of good and decency, and we weren't involved.
I know.
We were attacked, and we didn't defend ourselves.
But also, it's not only legally insignificant what he says; it's also morally completely and utterly ridiculous, and it's also, by any measure of common sense, idiotic. Because he's effectively saying, there's a guy outside the house with a baseball bat, right? But we're not going to do anything about that unless he comes into the house and starts beating us with it. And then we might call the police, as opposed to
legal
actually
taking...
as
it's
opposed
even
to
more
taking...
absurd, Mike.
Yeah.
It's absurd. His position is apparently that you can't do anything until the man with the baseball bat actually hits you.
Yeah. Yes.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
It's such bad law, Mike.
And as he was asked in the Commons the other day by an MP whose name I don't know from the Tory party, if, for example, the Iranians launch a missile attack on a British base in Cyprus, and you then decide to retaliate by bombing Iran, is that defensive or offensive? And he couldn't answer it. Because he doesn't know.
And his position is absolutely ridiculous. Basically, the Prime Minister would be saying that we must destroy the German army, but we can't invade Berlin if it were World War II. I mean, he's just risible and pathetic. And the world is not this legalistic.
No.
And international diplomacy is obviously not this legalistic. I mean, there are areas of our lives which are highly legalistic, like GDPR and other areas. And actually, I think that's a mistake, but that's a discussion for another day.
Yeah.
But international diplomacy is far from legalistic. I don't know how so many people are employed in public international law. I don't understand how there are so many international lawyers, given that there isn't really a market for any of this stuff.
No.
And it just and what you find, Mike, and we discovered it yesterday with one of these international lawyers. This one was in Australia, who likes to go on Australian media and say that wars are unlawful. He was actually paid $140,000 by China. And you do have to wonder, who is paying these people? Who is paying these international lawyers, who, by the way, are not very good at international law? Right. And for your listeners and viewers, they don't just have to listen to me. I now stand with Lord Wolfson of Tredegar, Suella Braverman, Michael Ellis, the retired military judge whose name I because I'm old, forget in The Spectator, and a few other decent lawyers who are coming out and saying, and Natasha Hausdorff, who's incredibly brilliant. We're all saying this was never illegal. He just gets the law wrong. Starmer either is an idiot or a liar. Either way, he gets the law wrong. And Evil Penfold, his Attorney General, also gets the law wrong.
But they deliberately
very brutal about this.
But they also deliberately use the law in order to do nothing. That's what it seems to me that they want it for. They want to be able to have an excuse to do nothing. Felipe Sands, another one, the guy that made £8 million out of representing Mauritius while selling out his own country, right? And he was on the radio the other day on BBC Radio 4, believe it or not, saying, it's all a done deal. There's nothing anybody can do. It doesn't matter what the Parliament in Britain decides. It doesn't matter what the UN says. This has all happened, and it's the horse is bolted. Just get on with it and just forget about it. But let's have a look, actually, finally, because we haven't played this yet this morning, on what Donald Trump had to say yesterday about Keir Starmer.
By the way, I'm not happy with the UK either. That island that you read about, the lease, okay, he made it for whatever reason, he made a lease of the island. Somebody came and took it away from him. And it's taken 3-4 days for us to work out where we can land there. It would have been much more convenient landing there as opposed to flying many extra hours. So we are very surprised. This is not Winston Churchill that we're dealing with.
Yeah, we're not dealing with Winston Churchill. Probably the understatement of the century, I think, there. But again, he's been called out by the President of the United States of America. The people that support Keir Starmer in this country, and I find it incredible that anybody does, but there are some, are trying to make out that he's some kind of great statesman who isn't going to be told what to do by the Americans. Nobody could be more wrong, could they?
Well, he's no Churchill. And to be honest, Mike, he's no Theresa May.
No, he really isn't. You know, I don't know how more ridiculous. In fact, we've actually got a poll out today asking who is Keir Starmer most like if he's not like Churchill. Is it Kim Jong-un? Is it Mao Zedong? Is it Keith Stalin? Or is it Alan Carr?
Well, that's an insult to Alan Carr, I think. A man who many of us deeply respect and consider a serious intellectual on the world stage. Keir Starmer is a joke. And I like this. And I think that this is very British. What we are doing is we are laughing at them. Let's be absolutely clear. We are laughing at Keir Starmer and we are laughing at the tyrants and the would-be authoritarians. And this is how we protect ourselves. We didn't fall to tyranny last time. And if you go back, and listeners and viewers, if they don't know, please go read P.G. Wodehouse. We protected ourselves from tyranny by laughing at it.
Yes.
And what P.G. Wodehouse does is he takes the Oswald Mosley figure and he takes the absolute mick out of him. He makes him a ladies' underwear designer, and he just completely rips into him. And this is what we must do again, because I'm afraid this is the time we live in. Authoritarians abound, humans drunk on controlling others, pretending they're doing it for their own good, but we all know that's a lie. They're just doing it because they like to control people. Well, the best thing you can do is laugh at them, you know, and I've been on the thick end of this. You know, I got dragged out of a railway station by a would-be authoritarian. The best defense is to laugh at these people. Just laugh at them. We don't need to fight them. Don't take them seriously. Laugh at them. And let's laugh at this terrible and pathetic Prime Minister. What a weak, tiny, pathetic little man he is, and his best mate, evil Penfold. And they will clothe themselves, Mike, in all sorts of honours and titles and garbs and pretend that they must be taken seriously and demand respect. Never trust anyone who demands respect.
Yes.
If anybody watching this respects me, and you don't have to, but if anybody does, I hope it's because I've earned it. Respect should be earned.
Absolutely.
Our Prime Minister has not earned any respect. He's a joke of a man, a pathetic dweeb of a man.
Yeah.
And we should not respect him, and we should just laugh at him. Just keep laughing at him until he goes. He should have resigned anyway. So why is he even still here?
I know.
Why is President Trump even forced to know who he is?
I know, it's embarrassing. It really is absolutely, utterly embarrassing. Let me ask you, actually, if you don't mind, to go back to that Marylebone railway station episode a few weeks ago now. What's the latest on that?
Nothing. There is nothing. They suffer corporate paralysis. But what's happened is quite sweet, is that I've got a home station. And all the stuff, and obviously what they've obviously done is informed all of their staff of who I am.
Right.
So I now... It's a bit like being a weird type of celebrity, like a sort of, I don't know what.
You get the red carpet. Oh, Barrett's coming. Get the red carpet out.
No, and so I still find Marylebone very difficult. But fortunately, every single member of staff at my local station, and obviously I know them all because there's not many of them, they are lovely. So my home station is quite a pleasant place to be.
Yeah.
And one of them piped up to me just the other week and said, has Marylebone not apologised to you yet? And it's very clear to me that they want to distance themselves from Marylebone. So it's becoming a sort of internal tension within Chiltern Rail. But it was just wrong what they did to me. It doesn't matter that it was me. It'd be wrong if they did it to anybody else. And instead, you see this corporatist response, this defensive response, where everything has... It's very Starmer-like. He is the epitome of this type of way of being.
Yes, these are the rules. These are the rules, and therefore you will adhere to the rules. You know, that's what he's like.
Yeah, we cannot apologise. We must go to... It's just like, just be human again. And I think we must get our country fixed, Mike. I'm very passionate about this now because this can't go on. It will end up with a dictator if we just go down this route.
Yes.
And you know, we just can't have that because we are the people of Boaty McBoatface, not the people of some mad dictator or Starmer.
Yes.
Keir Starmer does not represent us at all.
No, and I'm very much like you. You kind of fight this thing one day at a time and one kind of episode at a time. I actually had a minor victory this week because a friend of mine was coming into town last week for dinner, and we were going to meet up in Borough Market and go to this really nice French restaurant that I really love. And I booked a table, and then in the morning she rang and said, "Look, I'm really sorry, but I'm not going to be able to get away from where she lives in the Channel Islands." She's like, "I'm not going to be able to get there," so I cancelled the reservation. Lo and behold, about 2 days later, I happened to be checking my credit card, statement, and they charged me 50 quid for cancelling the dinner. And I thought, that's ridiculous. And I looked up how much money I'd spent there last year. And so I thought, I'm just going to ring them up. And I was very calm and I was completely civilised. And I said, can I speak to the manager? And I got this French guy. And he said, oh, I'm terribly sorry, Mr. Graham. I think it was a mistake. And they immediately refunded the money and said, you know, we're terribly sorry, it won't happen again. And I kind of was encouraged that civilization is not yet dead, because as long as you can talk to people and, you know, you didn't have to shout, you didn't have to row, didn't have to kind of threaten them with anything. I just said, look, is there any chance that you've done this by in error? And I sort of gave them an out. And they said, yeah, we're really sorry. We'd love to see you again. We'll send you. And they refunded the money literally within 5 minutes. So there is hope, I think, for us.
There is always hope, and I think we have to recognise that we are all humans. I think you are very wise to give them what we call, in the conflict industry, which is what litigation is, an off-ramp.
Yes.
A way of getting out of the scenario without feeling that they're completely defeated. That's a very wise thing to do. But also, you're right, talking to a human is the solution. And these people like Keir Starmer, who don't want us to live like this, they don't want us to live in a nice, lovely, you know, English, British culture. They don't want us talking to humans. They want us talking to AI. They want us talking to call centers. They want us automated. These are it's literally, look, I can quote Charlie Chaplin, who I'm sure if your listeners and viewers even know who he is, will think he's from a very long time ago. But his speech is still pertinent today. These are machine men with machine minds and machine hearts. We cannot give ourselves up to these people. Starmer is a machine man. He's not a real boy. He's not. You know, we have to accept that these people, these machine people, are amongst us. We should never have given them power, and let's have a real serious look at ourselves for how these people got into power. Although, let's be perfectly honest, Starmer wasn't elected; he fell into power accidentally. Yes. I mean, he got fewer votes than Jeremy Corbyn got when he lost.
Yeah.
So the idea that he was elected is by choice is some total and complete myth. But we have a system which has allowed these machine men to gain power. We need to get rid of the machine men. We need to fix that system. We need to become a culture and a country of human beings again. We are multi-ethnic, and we have been for a very long time, and no one has a problem with that, and that's great. But let's have one overriding culture of basic decency and goodness, and let's get that back.
Yes. Could not agree with you more. Steve, just before I let you go, because I know you're a very busy man, we've got to mention May the 6th, Shepherd's Bush Empire. We're doing a live show. You're going to join us, which I'm really looking forward to. We're not quite sure exactly what we're going to do yet, but it's going to be an evening of chat, an evening of thoughtfulness, an evening of philosophy, an evening of humour, where we're all going to sit down and go, do you know what? Actually, life isn't that bad. And let's have a laugh. And let's, as you say, continually make fun of those who would seek to kind of, you know, prejudice us and keep us down.
Yes, well, let's come together as a family and have some fun.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of decent people in this country, and we've all put up with an awful lot. And one of the ways that the bad people controlled us was keeping us separate and, you know, keeping us away from each other. So let's all come together. That will be a statement of strength in itself. And I will be deeply disappointed if Keir Starmer is still in office by May the 6th. So I look forward to making fun of some other Labour leader and not having to even remember who Keir Starmer was. Like Madame Tussauds, I don't intend to even remember him. I intend for him.
I mean, let's face it, when he's finished in Downing Street, he can just go and stand in Madame Tussauds. It'd be a much better waxwork than any of the other waxworks in there, to be honest. But listen, Stephen, great to see you. Thank you very much indeed. May the 6th, Stephen Barrett there. What a man. What a thinker. And what a great person he is to have along with us on that live show. You'll be able to get some tickets from Ticketmaster. We're going to post a link very shortly. It's the Shepherd's Bush Empire, London, May the 6th in the evening. It's a Wednesday night. Also, we've got Right Said Fred coming along. We've got Lewis MacLeod, one of the great impressionists, coming along. He can even do Keir Starmer for us. Simon on the Super Chat's asking where he can get tickets. Ticketmaster is the place to go, but we will put a link out, obviously. And we've got lots of other people who are going to be coming along as well. Many people who you'll know from this show. and many other people who you may not know yet, but who we will introduce you to. A super chat from Marco says this: needed Starmer gone yesterday, let alone today. Could be naive, but I genuinely never thought the country would allow a Prime Minister to stay whilst being so bloody awful. Well, that's entirely right. I mean, how on earth is it possible that this guy is still here? It's incredible, isn't it? I've got this from Robert, which has come in as an email. If proof were ever needed, if you build it, they will come. Is your show over the last 8 to 9 weeks of the show starting? All the usual commentators now want to be with you. They backed away at the start, but I believe they are now scrambling to be on the Best Breakfast Show. Some like Russell, Mark and Emma from the start knew and believed and had belief in you and the team. Well done, not just to Mike, but to Pooch and Charlotte as well. And of course, that massive team behind the scenes that some think you have. Yes, absolutely right. And if you are listening and watching on the Substack this morning, you'll know that we're taking some time to try and improve the service on the Substack. So we'll be working through that over the course of the next couple of weeks as well. We've got a poll going at the moment. Keir Starmer, according to Donald Trump, is not exactly Winston Churchill. So who is he most like? Is it Kim Jong-un? Is it Mao Zedong? Is it Keith Stalin? Or is it Alan Carr? And as Stephen Barrett said, it's a bit of an insult to Alan Carr, actually, but 33% of you are so far suggesting that that is who he is most like. Extraordinary stuff. I've got loads of posts to open as well, because loads of you have sent it in. I've also got, by the way, and I don't know when we do this, Pooch, but I've got an address now for you to write to get yourself one of these bumper stickers, right? So I will be telling you exactly what that is. And here it is, postal details, right? This is what you do. Please send, and you need to pay attention because it's a C5 stamped addressed envelope, which is that size, basically. So if you imagine, there's the, there's the bumper sticker and there's the envelope. So it's one of those kind of size envelopes, so it goes in without being squashed or folded. And please send that too with a stamp on it, so that we can send it back to you. The Mike Graham Show, PO Box 257. That's 257, Battle, East Sussex, TN33 3FS. That's F for Freddy, S for Sugar. So it's the Mike Graham Show, PO Box 257. Battle, East Sussex, TN33 3FS. And if you send us a stamped addressed envelope, C5 size, we will send it right back to you. We've got plenty of them, so if you want a bumper sticker, you know what to do. Let's get some news, shall we, with Edward Hughes.
Good morning all, here's the news with me, Edward Hughes. The escalating war between the United States, Israel and Iran dominates global headlines on its 5th day. Israel launched a fresh, broad wave of airstrikes on Iranian targets, while Iran continued retaliatory drone and missile attacks, including one near the US consulate in Dubai that sparked a fire, and strikes that reportedly destroyed advanced US radar systems. The death toll in Iran exceeds 780, with earlier strikes killing the supreme leader and other top officials, plus civilians in incidents like a school bombing. President Trump warned more US casualties are likely and stated the US can fight forever, while the Pentagon named fallen American troops from regional attacks. Oil prices have surged sharply amid threats to the Strait of Hormuz and halted energy exports, rattling global markets. US senators expressed fears of potential boots on the ground after briefings. Elsewhere, new US tariffs on Mexico, Canada, and China took effect, prompting retaliation and economic concerns. Remember to like and subscribe. Laters, Tigers. Oh, by the way, Mike, Mrs. Hughes has a question she would like to ask you, if that's okay.
Good morning, Mike. Edwina here. I'm off out to Cardiff on a work stew on Friday night. I imagine I'll get pretty hammered. The taxi cost home to our mansion will be about £110. A hotel room in the city will be about the same. Which option would you choose? Or should I consider driving, not getting slammed and having a rubbish time?
Well, Edwina, there's absolutely no question what you should do. You should stay the night in Cardiff, which means you can go out and not worry about how hammered you get. And you won't have to worry about, having to make it home and missing your station, getting off at the wrong stop or anything like that, or missing your taxi. I would say stay in Cardiff. You can stay out later. You can have breakfast in a hotel when you wake up in the morning, in bed if you like. And who knows, you might even get lucky. Poor old Edward will just have to deal with it. It's quite a fun town, Cardiff, I can tell you that for sure, with some personal experience. Now, before we speak to Gerald Howarth, former Defence Minister of this great country of ours, to talk about what's going on over in the Middle East, plus what's going on at home, I've got loads and loads of posts, so I'm going to try and do it. I know we've got Mike's sack to play. Sometimes we do that. I don't know if we can.
You've got mail.
I'm going to just try and do this, from time to time, because obviously trying to do it in one fell swoop is difficult. This is from Marion and Dennis, who are in Sandergate in Kent. So thank you very much for that. Dear Mike, enclosed us some vintage lucite cufflinks. Is that right? Is that the way you say it? Lucite cufflinks from the same era as the Andy Warhol Mickey Mouse tie we sent you some time ago. I remember that. I still wear it. Possibly adding to your blue aesthetic. If they're a bit OTT for you, please find them another home. Enjoy the new show very much. All the best. And this is what they are. Now, I don't know if you can see this, Pooch, but look at these. They're really... Further forward, yeah. They're very kind of retro, cool cufflinks, aren't they? Yeah. So, I mean, these are very much, I would say, without wishing to be too presumptive, they're more kind of your style, Pooch, than they are mine.
They don't see how snappily I dress, do they?
They don't, no, because they're not allowed to. No. But these could really fit in your style. Also, this from Marion, who says, by the way, with reference to your investigations into the boat people, we had a very interesting conversation with a gentleman in a hospital waiting room. He said that fishermen on the beach at the eastern docks in Dover were informed that if they photographed the incoming migrant boats, they would have their fishing licences revoked. That's the Starmer world that we live in, ladies and gentlemen, which is pretty ridiculous. But listen, guys, thank you very much indeed for that. Marion and Dennis, both kind, very kind. Send us a stamped addressed envelope and you'll get yourself a free bumper sticker, because that's what's going on. Let's talk now to Sir Gerald Howarth, who is, of course, former Defence Minister in one of the previous Tory governments, and a man who knows a thing or two about the defence of the realm. Gerald, a very good morning to you.
Yo, good morning, Mike. Like your cufflinks.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, they're cool, aren't they? Very cool.
Now, I'm wearing my father's squadron cufflinks, 31 Squadron, the Gold Stars.
Oh, very nice. It's a splendid shirt you've got on there as well. I've actually got a bit of a stripe thing going on as well. Anyway, that's enough compliments, right? So let's get down to business. I don't understand the strategy of this government at all, right? One minute they say we're not going to be involved in any kind of attack on Iran, despite the fact that it's not necessarily illegal to do so. Then we're not going to send a ship to protect the Cyprus base that we've got British soldiers and airmen in. But now we are, but they're not going to get there for 4 or 5 days. And we're only going to use defensive capability rather than offensive capability. I mean, what is going on inside the brains of the Department of Defence at the moment?
Well, I think the rot is at the top. I mean, this is humiliating and embarrassing for the United Kingdom that we're led by a Prime Minister who just is all over the shop as far as this very, very serious issue is concerned. And he has managed to alienate and irritate the President of the United States, of whom I am a very severe critic when it comes to Ukraine. But on this, I think he has certainly started the right process. But I mean, the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, does seem to be completely in hoc to the Muslim vote, which of course deserted the Labour Party at the by-election last week and went to the Greens. And indeed, the President of the United States mentioned that particular point. He said that he thought that Sir Keir was pandering to the Muslim vote. And also, of course, don't forget, this man attaches far more importance to international law than he does to the preservation of the interests of the United Kingdom, whatever he says at the dispatch box in the House of Commons. And he's got an Attorney General who is one of the Human Rights Lawyer Brigade, who've given away the Chagos Islands. I mean, this is a catastrophic government, Mike.
Yes, it really is. And also, it's a catastrophic operations director, if you like, of the defence of the realm. Because it seems to me that his attitude is, we are not going to do anything until somebody bombs us or until somebody attacks us. We're not going to preempt that. We're not going to defend ourselves before that. We're not going to make it possible to, to put people off from attacking us. And as I said, if they want to defend the Cyprus base, we're going to be 4 days out before we can even get the ship there.
Absolutely. I mean, the Prime Minister said that the regime there is abhorrent. He drew attention specifically on Sunday to the fact that Iranian interests have been responsible for 20 attempted assaults upon the people of the United Kingdom. So he said all that, but said, "Oh no, we have to stay our hand. We can't support. We don't want to be involved in the strike action." It's a bit like Lady Macbeth, willing to wound but afraid to strike. And it is just humiliating. I do, though, question where the senior military people have been on this.
Yeah.
Why did they not take it into their own hands some time ago to make preparations? Because the moment the United States administration turned around the aircraft carrier Abraham Lincoln, which was then heading to the South China Sea, the moment they turned that round and sent it back to the Gulf of Oman and sent the other carrier, Gerald R. Ford, into the Mediterranean, and the writing was on the wall. So where were the people in main building in the Ministry of Defense? What were they doing to prepare a Type 45 destroyer? It is the most sophisticated air defense destroyer in the world. Why were they not preparing to send that immediately to the region on standby if necessary?
Right.
Because obviously Cyprus was bound to be a target if things escalated.
Right, of course. And everybody could see, because it wasn't a secret, that the US fleets were gathering in the Gulf. There was no question that the build-up was really, really obvious, and that something was going to happen. So it seems as though they must have made a conscious decision not to send it deliberately.
Well, I do think we need to know that. We need to know whether the military people did actually say, Prime Minister, we need to make sure that we have assets in the region in case they are required. And I understand that one of the aircraft carriers is being readied for an Arctic operation. Well, what's going on in the Middle East, I think everybody can see is a far more immediate concern than what's going on in the Arctic, albeit that the Arctic is important, because we should not forget, as we sit here today on the 4th of March, Mike, we should not forget that Russia continues to be a major threat to the United Kingdom. But the immediate requirement now, the die having been cast in respect of Iran, which, don't forget, has a policy of pushing Israel into the Mediterranean Sea, and clearly has a policy of trying to develop nuclear weapons, and has been funding all these terrorist organizations, Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis, who are wreaking such mayhem in the region and threatening us and our interests as well. You'd have thought that they'd prepared the ground much more than they appear to have done so, albeit that, of course, as Ben Wallace, former Secretary of State for Defense, said, our assets have been hollowed out. Our armed forces are hollowed out. We've got, one destroyer we can send to the Mediterranean. I mean, it is actually it is pitiful, Mike.
Yeah. It is. And of course, what they'll say, Gerald, though, is that it's all your fault. It's all the Tories' fault, because you allowed it to happen when you were in charge.
Yeah, the Battle of Hastings was our fault as well. Everything was been
I take your point. They've been in quite a long time now. You'd think that they would be able to actually read the room, but they don't seem to be able to read the room, do they?
Well, the language has on occasions been fine. Yes, we've got to up our defence spending, the Prime Minister says, but there's absolutely zero evidence that they're doing it. If you strip out the expenditure on the deterrent, which was moved into the defence budget, as was military pensions moved into the defence budget when formerly it had been part of the DWP, we're below even 2%, and we're now being outstripped by many other countries in NATO who are spending more GDP on defence than we are. But there is a very valid point. What did the Tories do? Well, just let me try to explain very briefly, Mike. In 2010, when I and my colleagues came into government, I moved into main building in Whitehall. We inherited a budget deficit, that is excessive expenditure over income, in 1 year of £160 billion. We had to do something about it. I said to Liam Fox, then Secretary of State, that we should tell the Chancellor that we're Tories and we should not be cutting defence. But at that time, in 2010, Russia did not appear to be the threat that it was. There did not appear to be the growing threats elsewhere in the world. And we had to make some very difficult decisions. And in fairness to George Osborne, we did get that budget deficit down, and we were on track to get a balanced budget. And then COVID hit, the Chinese plague. And that cost the Treasury £440 billion. And that is what did so much damage to us. And for the Labour Party to attack us for our record when they hadn't a clue how to deal with COVID, and Rishi Sunak as Chancellor did keep our businesses afloat at the time. That is the backdrop. Today, it's a different story. Welfare costs are just ballooning, NHS costs are ballooning, and we face a very serious military threat to our country. And there is no evidence that cash is forthcoming to boost the defense budget and order the new kit that we need. We just saw, a couple of days ago, we saw 3 F-15 American fighters taken out of the sky by accident. Jeff Hoon in 2002, Secretary of State for Defense, and when Labour were in office, said that platform numbers no longer matter because of the sophistication of the bits of kit. You need numbers. Drones are being produced in thousands, and we have not yet responded. We are slow off the mark, and we need to prioritize defense expenditure. We need to persuade the public that it is in their interest. Indeed, it is essential for their freedom and for their way of life that we do enhance our military capability.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I've got some very bad news for you and for everybody else as well, Gerald, because there's a story that I saw this week in the Telegraph about how down in Salisbury Plain, that you'll know well, there's a place which is known as Cope Hill Down, which is the mock village where, you know, the armed forces use to sort of, you know, either launch assaults or send paratroops in, all sorts of things, and war games that they do. They've apparently been forced to install a bat disco, believe it or not, a lighting system, so that the bats don't get too upset whenever there's a mock military exercise going on. This is the latest in sort of what you might call bat protection, which is going on in every public sector operation in the country. But it now appears to be affecting the armed forces. It's unbelievable, isn't it?
I'm speechless, albeit that I'm well aware as a church warden here in a glorious Suffolk village of the ghastly stuff that bats do. We need to understand that we are facing a very serious situation. You therefore have to prioritize. And the idea that we circumscribe defense training because of some bats, I mean, it beggars belief. For God's sake, grow up. Understand that we need to take action to defend our people, because if our people are under attack, nobody's going to give a hoot about the bats, and the bats certainly aren't.
No, they're really not. Listen, they call it batshit bonkers Britain. And I'm sorry to swear, but I mean, that's what we call it now as well. Sir Gerald Howarth, great to talk to you. Thank you very much. Former Defence Minister there, making perfect sense. What is wrong with Keir Starmer? What is wrong with the Department of Defence currently? Why did they not see this coming? How did they not notice that the 7th Fleet, or whatever it is in America, was amassing a massive number of ships and planes and aircraft carriers in the middle of the Persian Gulf and in the Straits of Hormuz? How is it possible that they've now decided to send a boat to protect the good citizens and the armed services in Cyprus, and yet it won't get there for 4 days? I mean, it's absolutely pathetic, isn't it? Coming up, Nigel Evans is with us, former Tory MP, of course, and Deputy Speaker at the House of Commons. John says this on the Super Chat: stagnant Starmer, the country harmer. Yeah, stagnant's good. I'm starting to call him Simple Starmer, because that's what I think is about right. Now, we're going to be speaking to William Yarwood coming up shortly. But are we going to Dubai first, Pooch? No, we're not. We're not going to Dubai, OK. We were hoping to go to Dubai, but we might do that a bit later on. Are we now going to talk to William Yarwood, who is from the Taxpayers Alliance? Because, of course, yesterday... William, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike. Great to see you, man.
Amongst many of the other distraction techniques Keir Starmer was trying to operate so that we don't notice how useless he is, he put Rachel Reeves up to give us a sort of budget statement because she's even more useless than he is, and it kind of takes the takes the eye away from looking at him for a moment. But the Taxpayers Alliance have had a pretty, I would say, robust defence against what Rachel Reeves said yesterday. I mean, unbelievably, she kind of came out and made out that everything in the garden was rosy, didn't she?
Yeah, she did, Mike, and that's why I think it was completely delusional from Rachel Reeves. I mean, she just seemed to be on a separate planet altogether, and even the Shadow Chancellor Mel Stride said that to her. But yeah, look, she basically says that everything's under control, folks. I've restored Britain's economic stability. I've got growth back in the economy, and I'm the perfect Chancellor, guys. I've done nothing wrong. But if you actually look underneath the bonnet, you realise that growth has actually slowed for next year. So it's going to be below 1.5% next year, and it's going to be about 1.6, 1.7% over the next few years. Now, people might say, oh, that's better than what we have, but that's still extremely anemic growth. If we need much more growth if we're going to have a successful economy and actually produce more wealth in this country, because that level of growth in the next few years, Mike, doesn't mean that the economy is getting better. It means the economy is just stagnating and trickling along. And then also you look at the tax burden. The tax burden is now set to reach a record high by the end of this decade, something we at the Taxpayers Alliance have been warning about for quite a long time. And she seems to be completely delusional about that fact, meaning that more and more people are going to be paying more and more taxes, whether it's in the form of income tax, national insurance, and get dragged into higher tax thresholds. But many people in this country will just think, well, you know what, forget this. I'm just going to leave, or I'm just going to go on welfare because I'm not going to be paying such high rates of taxes. And then the unemployment statistics. I mean, it's going to peak later this year at 5.3%, which is equivalent to 1.9 million people. So how on earth she says she's got the economy back on a stable footing, I really don't know.
I know, incredible. There was a great sort of summation made by one of your colleagues, Darwin Friend at the Taxpayers Alliance. He's, I think, the research director on the economics front. Let's have a look at what he had to say.
What was that? I've just come out from listening to Rachel Reeves' spring statement in which she gloated about restoring stability to the public finances and bringing back growth. What is she talking about? Growth has just been downgraded in 2026. Debt is still on the rise, and we're still going to be spending more and more on debt interest. This is nothing more than a sick joke to taxpayers. Try talking up anemic growth to publicans, mechanics, hairdressers, and entrepreneurs, the very bedrocks of this country. Enough is enough. We need politicians who are going to put families and businesses first. That means cutting spending and giving it back to them via big tax cuts.
And of course, as you might have expected, William, despite the kind of the sleight of hand and all of the nonsense that Rachel Reeves came out with, she's now going to blame what's going on in the Middle East, the war, if you like, for the rising cost of energy. There's stories in the Mail this morning talking about how energy bills could soar by over 500 quid. There's talk of panic at the petrol pumps because petrol prices are going to go up. And of course, she will hold her hands up and go, well, it's nothing to do with me, Gov. It's all their fault.
Yeah, and that's what she'll say, but doesn't mean it's going to be true. I think one of the scariest things about the whole discussion around energy and the cost of living is with this Iran situation, it means that our friend Red Ed Miliband is going to be doubling down on the net zero agenda. He's going to be saying that this is the reason we need, Chinese imported and Chinese made solar panels, is why we need more wind farms. This is why we need net zero to protect our energy security. All the while we have oil off the North Sea, which he basically refuses to use to actually, combat some of this issue. So yeah, Rachel Reeves is basically, and she's done this before, Mike. We've talked about this before. Rachel Reeves enjoys blaming everyone except herself. Yeah. She'll blame the OBR. She'll blame the last government. She'll blame Brexit. She'll blame the damn weather. But she'll never look in the mirror and recognise that her own tax and spend budgets, which by the way have not seen any real improvement in public services or living standards, she will never understand that those policies are simply not working, because all she thinks that the problems is that that certain things don't have enough money, and actually all we need to do is just squeeze more out of people and throw more money into broken systems, because she's fundamentally clueless, and I think fundamentally incurious about what might be worth in terms of deeper reforms, because she's got no idea about that. That's too difficult, that's too hard, so why don't we just squeeze people for a bit more of their cash? I mean, I'm really, really annoyed, actually, because one thing that was also gone understated, and I think the Daily Mail has actually talked about it, is the rising benefits bill. The welfare bill by the end of this decade, Mike, is going to be £407 billion. I challenge anybody, either in government or outside of government, to try and explain to me how that is sustainable and how on earth we're going to pay for all of that.
Yeah. And they did look remarkably pleased with themselves, which I thought was really kind of uncalled for and also kind of insulting to ordinary people who are struggling. You know, we found out this week, just picking something out of the air, that something like 350 employees of Brewdog, the brewery, are going to be made redundant. You know, I know that it's not quite as simple as just the economy. Nevertheless, there's an awful lot of people. I think there's 230,000 people, Robert Jenrick was talking about this yesterday, who were working when Labour got in, who are now not working since Labour have been in, because they've lost their jobs. You know, so I think to be sort of smiling and laughing and mocking the opposition benches is really not a good look.
No, it's not, Mike, and it just shows how disconnected she is. Like I said, she lives in her own little world and seems completely incapable of understanding the consequences of her own actions. What did she think was going to happen when she hiked employers' national insurance on businesses? I mean, are businesses and people who work in businesses not working people after all? She said she was not going to raise taxes on working people. Well, she did. And then that means businesses are either shutting down, not hiring more people, not investing in other areas, not giving pay rises. And then she tries and hikes the minimum wage, which means that young people can't get a first rung on the ladder. There's the Employment Rights Bill, which has sort of been missed in this overall discussion, which is going to put even more red tape on businesses, meaning it's going to be even harder for them to hire, and not just people more generally, but young people. And they seem to have absolutely no strategy for reducing this unemployment, which they themselves created in the first place. So I am just done with Reeves gloating and saying that she's had, restored economic stability to Great Britain, when employment is skyrocketing, the tax burden is going to reach a record high by the end of this decade, and debt, Mike, is going to be £3 trillion by the end of this decade. And she'll go on about how she's actually reduced the speed of it. But she still increased it. She still increased the national debt. She's not brought it down like she said she would. So all she's doing is breaking her promises and failing to realise that the real problems with the economy are caused by her, and she needs to look in the mirror and recognise that.
Yeah, I guess if you're getting up in the morning and looking in the mirror and seeing Rachel Reeves staring back at you, it's already a bad day. Do you know what I mean? Richard III, there you go. William Yarwood, brilliant to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Taxpayers Alliance, who've got some pretty harsh words for the Chancellor of the Exchequer, who made her speech yesterday. And I thought really didn't do herself any favours by kind of making out that everything in the garden was rosy. And that, in fact, the world could not be a better place. Smiling, laughing, obviously being told not to look too miserable, and it's certainly not to burst into tears like she normally does. So just a shocking performance yesterday from her. We'll hear from some of the other politicians in the room as to what they thought. In fact, why don't we hear from Robert Jenrick, or would you prefer Jacob Rees-Mogg? Let's do Jacob Rees-Mogg. Have a look.
There were rumours that Rachel Reeves was not going to present the spring statement herself, or possibly at all, and it's a pity those rumours didn't turn out to be true, because the spring statement was pointless, as I'm afraid Rachel Reeves has become pointless. If you listened to it, and you heard her ramble on for between 20 and 30 minutes, finding it hard not to allow your eyes to glaze over, you would have thought that everything in the garden was rosy. It ignored the fundamental problem at the moment, that is to say, a crisis in the Middle East that has had an effect on oil and gas prices that may be temporary but may not be. It glossed over the OBR's revising down of growth from 1.4% to 1.1% and had very little to say about the problems of unemployment that's now expected to go above pandemic highs, and it managed to blame youth unemployment, the so-called NEETs, on the Conservatives, who haven't now been in office for 2 years. It was a statement that just seemed to fail to understand what is going on in the country or in the world. Now, what would a wise Chancellor have done? What would a thoughtful Chancellor have done? First of all, a thoughtful Chancellor might have said at the beginning that considering the events that are going on in the world, the forecasts must be taken with a great deal of caution. If the natural gas price remains at its current exalted levels, then that will have a profound effect on the economy over the course of the year. If they fall back, then it won't. But not even to work through that, to take the House of Commons into the confidence of the Treasury's thinking at the second most important statement of the year after the budget, seems to me to be a willful dereliction of duty. We know that energy prices, gas and electricity prices, are going to come down in April. But those cuts may not in fact be affordable if the natural gas price remains where it is. As it happens, I don't think that's likely to happen. I think we will get a flow of gas coming back and that the shutdowns in Qatar will prove temporary and that the difficulties with the Straits of Hormuz will prove temporary. But I may be wrong, and any sensible Chancellor would be thinking through the options. Likewise, the oil price has risen significantly in the last couple of days and may remain at these levels, which would have an inflationary consequence. And what would the
Jacob Rees-Mogg there, a very sensible person who seems to know more about economics than Rachel Reeves has in her kind of massive brain. But anyway, we'll come back to that because Nigel Evans is here. Nigel, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Former Deputy Speaker of the House, of course, and also MP for Ribble Valley for long standing. We'll talk to him. He was in Dubai relatively recently. We'll talk to him about that. Also about Rachel Reeves and the state of the economy. First, though, let's get some news with Edward Hughes.
Good morning, all. Here's the news with me, Edward Hughes. The escalating war between the United States, Israel and Iran dominates global headlines on its fifth day. Israel launched a fresh broad wave of airstrikes on Iranian targets, while Iran continued retaliatory drone and missile attacks, including one near the US consulate in Dubai that sparked a fire, and strikes that reportedly destroyed advanced US radar systems. The death toll in Iran exceeds 780, with earlier strikes killing the supreme leader and other top officials, plus civilians in incidents like a school bombing. President Trump warned more US casualties are likely and stated the US can fight forever, while the Pentagon named fallen American troops from regional attacks. Oil prices have surged sharply amid threats to the Strait of Hormuz and halted energy exports, rattling global markets. US senators expressed fears of potential boots on the ground after briefings. Elsewhere, new US tariffs on Mexico, Canada, and China took effect, prompting retaliation and economic concerns. Remember to like and subscribe. Laters, Tigers. Oh.
Edward Hughes there with the news. Keep listening and keep watching us. It's coming up to, what is it, just about 8 o'clock? 8 o'clock, 8:07, believe it or not. Wednesday the 4th of March. There's the international clock behind us as well, telling you the right time somewhere in the world. And, of course, we're going to be talking about a great many things coming up. Plank of the day is going to be the bat disco, which apparently has been invented for the bats of Salisbury Plain. You know, not content with already. I used to live down there actually, and they used to do sort of night operations, and you would have all these bright lights going off because every explosions didn't make any noise because apparently the locals didn't like the bombs going off. Anyway, never mind all that. Nigel Evans is here. Nigel, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Welcome back to London. You've been on your travels. You've
Thank
been
you.
in
I was
Greece.
in Dubai last week.
You've been in Dubai. You were in New York not that long ago. You know, when are you getting time to write the book? Is would be my first question.
I know, yeah. Well, events, dear boy.
Events, dear boy, yeah. So
I couldn't believe it. So there I am last week in Dubai, and last Wednesday, sitting on the palm with Ant Middleton and a few other friends.
Okay.
And we were chatting about, the current situation around the world. And I said, well, with all the military assets that America are putting into the region, it's quite clear to me that there's going to be an attack sooner rather than later.
Yeah, because literally every day they were adding more ships to the Gulf,
weren't
they?
Absolutely. And if I was able to read it, in the newspapers, because, funnily enough, I don't get CIA giving me private briefings.
Interesting.
If I'm able to get a gleam that something's going to kick off pretty soon, then why didn't the government? The fact that we haven't got any military assets in the area at all, that we weren't even prepared to do so. And it was only when the French and the Greeks start sending military assets in, that we decide to send an F-45 frigate in. Really?
Yeah, I know.
Are we mad?
I think
are
there's
we insane?
I think there's a simple explanation for this. I mean, obviously, one, the government is completely useless, rudderless, hopeless, and without a clue about foreign affairs. But equally, I think, if there ever was a conversation, they don't want to be involved because they want to. I mean, you can tell because he keeps saying it. We were not involved in the early strikes because he's got a reason for that, and his reason, which I think is very clear to see, is that he doesn't want to upset the Muslim community of this country, who, regardless of what they might say, are still supporters of the Iranian regime.
Yeah, some of them definitely will be, no doubt, that they were mourning the loss of Ali Khamenei and all that. And I was.
Well, there's all sorts of commemorations going on up and down the country.
I can see it. Yeah, I can absolutely see it. And some of them at universities, which is even more worrying.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, I was delighted that he was taken out. I've got to say, right from the very start, right? We've got a government that says, well, yeah, all right, we're pleased that he's no longer head of Iran because of all the despicable, murderous things that he's been up to since he's ever been in. Yet we don't want to get involved in any action that the United States are taking. Right. I would have not been reaching the phone if I'd been the Prime Minister and talking to lawyers. I would have been reaching the phone and talking to Donald Trump.
Yes.
No wonder he's come out with this really crushing line yesterday to Harry Cole of The Sun, saying that we're not dealing with Churchill here.
Right.
We're not even dealing with Chamberlain here. That's how bad he is. I used to think that Keir Starmer was useless. I now think he's dangerous.
I agree with you.
I literally now think he's dangerous. Not only have we got no assets in the area, it's going to take us a week now to get the frigate and 2 helicopters in there. The French have got more, the Greeks have got more.
Yeah.
But also, we have now alienated the President of the United States, who really is now talking up France more than he is talking up the United Kingdom. He's very disappointed in Keir Starmer. What does Donald Trump think that the British people feel like?
That's exactly what I said the other day. I said, if you think he's bad, anything we feel, you know. But this is the thing. You're absolutely right to say that he's dangerous, because not only is he incapable of doing the job because it's too big for him, he actually is now actively seeking methods and reasons for not doing things. You know, and I believe very firmly, and I watched him in Parliament the other day, that he is deliberately kind of putting roadblocks in the way, because everybody knows that he's hiding behind this international law nonsense.
Yes.
He's basically trying to say, oh, well, we can't do that because of this. You know, and so he's literally finding lawyers, because we can all do this, right? If you're trying to buy a house, or you're trying to get divorced or married or whatever, you can find a lawyer to do anything. Now, a lawyer will tell you that that's illegal, or that's not illegal, or I wouldn't do that if I were you. You know, you can find any number of lawyers to tell you any number of things, and there is nobody officially who has said that what America did was unlawful. In fact, Michael Ellis, I don't know if you saw it last night, was on Nigel Farage's show, former Attorney General, very, very clever man, very smart, completely destroyed Keir Starmer's argument and just said, there's no way that this is against the law. Nobody's saying it, apart from Lord Hermer, who's giving Starmer advice and watching him like a sort of, you know, overgrown school teacher in the House of Commons to make sure he doesn't put a, you know, step out of line.
Who's imposing this international law, and where's it coming from? I've got to say, I'm really pleased that in the early 1980s, we didn't have Keir Starmer as Prime Minister. Otherwise, everybody in the Falklands would be speaking Spanish. And if we'd had Keir Starmer in the 1930s as our Prime Minister, we'd all be speaking German. I mean, absolutely bonkers. We needed to be beside the United States in taking action against one of the most hideous regimes in the world that has been so unstable. And the reality is, Mike, if you only got to look at the reaction of Iran since the attack, is that they're now at war with, it seems to me, every Gulf state. Every neighbouring Gulf state is being hit, including Dubai. As I said, where I was last week, I was sitting on the Palm, not far from the Fairmont Hotel, which was one of the first hotels to take a strike. And I want to include Ed Davey in this, because I think...
What an idiot he is.
If I was doing Plank of the Week, he's probably going to be high up there. All he cares about is people like Isabel Oakeshott.
I put a tweet out. I said, you know, Ed Davey seems to think that Isabel Oakeshott's the problem, not the Iranian sort of, you know, killing machine.
Well, I saw Isabel the last but one time I was out there, and there's a lot of Brits who live not just in Dubai, but in other parts of the world for all sorts of reasons. And yet he is more concerned about the tax relationships of people living in other parts of the world, and we'll just use the UAE as the example here, that they should all be paying their taxes, otherwise they shouldn't be rescued. ignoring the fact, by the way, that anybody who would be repatriated from either the UAE or anywhere else has to pay for their own repatriation at some stage, Mike.
Right.
So he even got that wrong.
Also,
What
he
I would
doesn't.
like to say,
he hasn't got a clue, because there are plenty of people who live and work in Dubai who run businesses in this country and who pay plenty of tax. Thanks
absolutely,
very much indeed. You know?
And people who have got UK assets who are earning profits will be paying taxes on that as well. But what I would say to Ed Davey is I would really take my focus off Isabel Oakeshott and retired footballers and start to go back to when he was the minister in charge of the post office and why he didn't take sufficient action to protect decent postmasters and mistresses who were hounded into jail, hounded into suicide. He was the minister who let them really be prosecuted.
Yes.
And then he got the post office to do their own homework.
And
That's how useless he was.
And he's never addressed that. He's never apologised for it. He's never even talked about it. And also, I've just reminded myself that I wanted to do this the other day, so I'm doing it now, live on the air. Because when you talk about a waste of taxpayers' money, how about this, right? Ed Davey's business costs, his office that we pay for, you and I, you're going to like this, £268,809.58 for 24-25.
Does that include the costs to perhaps go to fairgrounds for all the water rides he goes on?
Well, do you know what it doesn't include? Office costs, apparently, because he's added another 26,000 for that. So he's basically claiming approximately £335,000 a year, right, from taxpayers to run his office.
Yeah, well, it'll be the same for Starmer. It'll be the same for people like Emily Thornberry, who there again tweeted some ridiculous thing that wars were only ended by negotiation. Really? Is that what happened in World War II? Is that what happened in the Falklands? No, it wasn't. It was the show of pure force that ended those wars. And yet we've got leaders, right? And not just Keir Starmer, but Ursula von der Leyen in Europe, completely useless.
Right.
They will travel thousands of miles for a photo opportunity with Donald Trump.
Oh, yes.
Right? As they did in Sharm el-Sheikh. And they would go
and then
up to
they'll all
Scotland.
talk behind Trump's back and say, oh, we're really horrible, but here's a picture of me with him, you know.
They must think that Donald Trump's a fool. He's not a fool.
He really isn't.
He absolutely does know what they think of him behind his back. But the reality is, as I say, you've got Ursula von der Leyen. She travels the world getting photo opportunities with her lovely pristine suits on, her hair completely lacquered. And Keir Starmer does exactly the same. But yet when it comes to shove, when we need British military assets to defend the British base in Cyprus, and also act alongside the United States. And the United States didn't even ask us.
Right.
That's how irrelevant we've become. Right. They didn't even ask us.
And also, we got one ship, right? Why is it in the Channel when it should be somewhere near Cyprus, protecting the troops and the base there? Just to continue to give Sir Ed Davey a kicking, he apparently was facing scrutiny regarding tax arrangements on earnings from second jobs at one time, including reports which indicated that over £100,000 was received by him in income from consultancy roles between 2017 and 2022 from a company called Energy Destinations Limited, which was run by his wife. So I don't think he's got many legs to stand on if he's going to have a go at Isabel Oakeshott and various other people who are making a perfectly good private living and paying tax on it without having to milk the taxpayer.
Well, the fortunate thing for us is that credibility isn't one of those elements that we need to consider when we're looking at Ed Davey. Let's be fair.
No, that's true.
I always thought that these people were against second jobs. It's amazing when self-interest comes in.
Isn't it?
The snouts soon at the trough.
Yeah, absolutely
Quite
right.
incredible.
Incredible. Snouts at the trough. Speaking of which, let's talk about Rachel Reeves and her statement yesterday.
It wasn't a statement.
Well,
it was a forecast.
It was a forecast. And apparently everything's going quite well. I mean, I was quite shocked, to be honest, because I didn't think it was. I thought unemployment was up to record levels. I thought youth unemployment is particularly at an 11-year high. I know that there's something like 230,000 people who have lost their jobs since Labour got in due to the increase in national insurance, the tax burden, which is now going to push everybody's tax rates up, and of course the workers' rights bill and all the rest of it. So how have I managed to get this so wrong, Nigel?
The problem with you, Mike, and that's a good opening for any sentence, is that you talk to normal people and you read the newspapers and you know what's going on.
Right. And I actually buy things in shops.
Yeah, that's right. This morning, I travelled through Brixton and Vauxhall to get here, looking at Alarm Clock Britain as they were getting out to do the jobs, many jobs that they don't particularly like, to earn money, to feed their families and all that sort of stuff. And yet, instead of listening to them and seeing what they're doing, we should be listening to Rachel Reeves. Because I did listen to Rachel Reeves. My mouth was open most of the time. Because I myself didn't think things were going so well, but now I've been corrected into that. It did remind me of 1984 and George Orwell. I mean, the only thing she missed out was the tractor production figures and how well they were going, and also perhaps taking credit for people winning the national lottery. You know, there's an extra millionaire being created today thanks to a Labour government. I mean, it is absolutely bonkers. We all know how weak the economy is. We know that a ton of people have lost their jobs. You've just had... was it Mike Yardley on talking about the jobs?
Yeah, William Yarwood. I always want to call him Mike Yarwood as well. It's an easy mistake to make.
Talking about the job losses, right? Brewdog, the hundreds of jobs that have been lost there. We know that the hospital, do you know, the word liar is something, as you know, as a deputy speaker, I wouldn't allow anybody to be accused of being a liar in the chamber of the House of Commons.
What's the basis
because everybody's honourable people.
Right.
So, but what we do know is that they said before the election that they were going to look after the hospitality industry and working class Britain. And
when they said look after, it's a bit like that scene in Pulp Fiction when he says, "What do you mean take care of?" You know, when you put the bullet to the head. You know.
Well, you've got, what is it, the nighttime advisor to Rachel Reeves saying, "Well, we're not bothered about the hospitality industry." Well, what the heck do they think is going on in the nighttime economy?
I know.
And so what did they face as soon as the election was over? It's business rate increases, the likes of which they couldn't be able to afford. Employers' national insurance increases, which they told would never happen, and then the minimum wage increases. This triple whammy is closing pubs at more than the rate of one a day.
There's a pub in my little village in Sussex, which has had its business rates up 140%, literally overnight.
Yeah,
and they're going, and you know, I know the guys there, and they're like, you know, we can't just keep putting the prices up. It's already quite an expensive pub to go and have dinner in, you know, but a lot of people do. It's the local place. Lots of people like to go there. But I mean, you can go in there with a family of 4 and spend about 200 quid. You know, if you've had a couple of bottles of wine.
Easy.
And, you know, people can't afford to spend more than that. They can't afford to put the prices up anymore. What are they supposed to do?
Well, do you know, if Labour MPs were allowed in pubs anymore, because as you know, they've been banned from a ton of them, then they could go and sit down and maybe overhear the conversations of normal people standing by the bar. And many of them will be saying, well, we're really pleased MPs have had a 5% increase in their salaries.
Don't get me started
in their
on
wages.
that.
And we're really pleased that they've got an inflation-busting pay increase. Because we haven't. We've lost our jobs.
And apparently, you know, well, they're all bleating now, apparently, in Westminster because they're going to be going over the £100,000 threshold and they're going to have to pay 65p as an income tax rate. Well, welcome to the real world.
I'm going to be sure that's going to be sorted out. And the other thing that maybe the people standing at the bar will be chatting about, and Kemi touched on it at last PMQs, was that special pension arrangement he's got when he left. As the Director of Public Prosecutions. Special legislation had to be brought in to ensure that he's got the most gilded pension that there ever is.
Yes.
So he's going to be all right.
He's got his own pension plan,
are going to be all right.
Right.
But what about Alarm Clock Britain? The people that I was staring at this morning on the streets of Brixton. I saw somebody sweeping the road, this guy sweeping the road this morning, doing an incredibly good job because there's so much filth and dirt on the roads around London these days. And I just thought, you know, you probably got up at 5:30 to get here, to don your suit and to get out with your cart to make sure that Britain's clean.
Absolutely.
And yet you're paying taxes in order to give a 5% increase to members of Parliament. At the same time, we've seen over 200,000 people lose their jobs. They're now on Benefit Street. Well, good news for them. At least Benefit Street is going to be looked after. It's just the people who are in work who are now paying the highest rate of taxation that they have ever paid in peacetime Britain before.
To pay for more and more people who are not generating any money whatsoever for the Exchequer. And just to make matters worse, in the Sun today, page 17, there's pictures, and they're also in the Mail, of dozens and dozens of migrants lining up on the beaches of northern France. The Gravelines is where they mostly are. Hundreds and hundreds stormed beaches in France yesterday. Number of small boats set sail for England, despite the French Coast Guard warning of strong tides. The weather's going to be decent for the next couple of months. We're going to be seeing, I think the number is already more than 2,200 migrants who have arrived since the beginning of January. And, you know, Shabana Mahmood talks a good game. She keeps saying, oh, well, you know, we're going to start sending people back. And if you try and disappear, we're going to find you and we're going to deport you. You know, again, more and more people coming into the country to be provided for by us, the taxpayers.
The 500 in, 1 out scheme is going incredibly well, Mike. Rachel Reeves.
That's about right, actually. That ratio is about right.
It's probably that ratio, to be honest. And what you've got is these people coming in the boatloads. They clearly don't read British newspapers, otherwise they wouldn't want to come here either. I mean, but of course, Benefit Street is a great magnet, as we've already been told by Emmanuel Macron. He said, "Why do you think people want to come there? You're too generous." Let's listen to him. Listen to him. So you've got all these people coming in by their thousands, well over 60,000 since Keir Starmer became Prime Minister. He told everybody at the general election he was going to bust the gangs, he was going to stop them coming. Well, they're coming by their thousands still. And at the same time, the people that Ed Davey, who's worried about, are the thousands of British people, entrepreneurs, people with money, who are now fleeing the United Kingdom for other parts of the world. And I've got news for him. They're also going to places like Italy and Monaco. There are lots of, Portugal. There are lots of other places who have actually woken up to the fact that they want to incentivize entrepreneurs to go to their countries.
Yeah.
You know,
and you know what's
doing
interesting?
deals
What's
with
interesting
entrepreneurs
as well, listening and talking to people in Dubai, my daughter lives there as well. You know, most people who are there from here are not worried about staying there. They're saying, you know, listen, it's still safer than London. You know, there might well be the odd, missile flying at us from Iran, but actually they've got such a good military defence capability with the Iron Dome and all the rest of it, and they're loving it so much they're not leaving. And that tells you how strong the bond is between the people who have left this country and their new home, but also how much less likely they are to ever come back.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of Twitter messages as well from the leadership of the UAE thanking. They're actually touched by the loyalty that people are showing in the UAE. 240,000 British people living there, and the number's growing. And of course, you can only imagine that's multiplied by other countries around the world as well. And they're touched. I mean, I've seen footage of the president of the UAE walking through the Dubai Mall.
Yeah, absolutely.
And youngsters going up and shaking the president's hand. I think it's really touching. Yet the vast majority of people around Dubai will be today. They won't be in garages unless there are genuine attacks happening. They'll be trying to
Most
go around
people are
their normal
currently saying
business.
that there's not really been any problems. I mean, there was an explosion last night adjacent to, I think, the US consulate. But again, it was shrapnel more than it was an actual missile and all of that. And certainly, you know, from what, just to go back to the Iranian situation, is, you know, particularly when you say to somebody like Keir Starmer, well, you know, what is wrong with you? You know, you've got a country which is literally within, you know, striking distance of a civilized place like Dubai, where people live, where people make money, where a lot of British people have moved to. And you think it's okay to let them continue to operate in the way that they have done, including, by the way, running serious, like, terrorist cells in Britain. Not just about, you know, it's not just about Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis and all that. It's about the internal terrorism cells that they're running in every single Western European country. And, you know, why wouldn't you want to blow the hell out of them, you know?
There is a thing called the enemy within, Mike, and it's definitely within the United Kingdom. It's in places like France, where we've seen terrorist actions taking place, in Germany. I mean, it's happening all over the world. They're not coming here to share our culture, that's for certain. They're importing their own distorted way of thinking. And quite frankly, they shouldn't be welcome here, and they should be sought down. And that's one of the reasons why the United Kingdom should be part of this operation with Donald Trump. He should have picked up the phone and said to Donald Trump, our RAF is at your disposal. What do you want?
What do you need? Exactly right.
What do you need? We want to be part of this. We want to be part of the regime change, which, don't forget, in the last month of its operation, before Ali Khamenei was killed, murdered 30,000 of their own citizens who bravely took to the streets. They took to the streets to protest against the regime that has been in place for almost 50 years. Let's pay tribute to the Iranian women's football team who refused to sing their national anthem. That wouldn't have gone amiss by the authorities that remain within Iran. How brave they were. How brave. That is what feminism looks like, Mike. Absolutely sterling stuff.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
If Britain wants to offer refugee status to anybody, let's do it to the Iranian women's football team.
Yeah, absolutely right. And some of them could probably play for West Ham, who are going down the gurgler faster than you can say, the Championship. Final question. I don't know if you were here last week when the Gorton and Denton by-election happened. Is it a seismic shift in the political kind of makeup of this country? Is it a sort of an exceptional standout case that will never happen again? What do you think?
No, well, listen, I fought 2 by-elections in my life. One where I knew I wasn't going to win, Pontypridd, and the other one I should have won, Ribble Valley, but people wanted to send a message about the poll tax, and I lost that one. It was the 13th safest Conservative seat. 12 months later, Mike, I won the general election, right? So by-elections are a different animal all of their own. The Greens one, I mean, what an absurd campaign they fought. Some of their videos were in Urdu, sending one message to one part of Gorton and Denton. And yet, when the winner gave her victory speech, she talked about potholes. She didn't do much of that during the by-election, right? So the worrying thing for the Labour Party, right, is we all know their toast. We all know Keir Starmer's toast. The local elections, many of which he did not wish to take place in May, which are now taking place because, funny enough, the lawyers give him some good advice in the end, which is you're going to lose this in the courts. So he caved in on that once we had another flip-flop. So we got local elections in May. They're going to do disastrously badly. Then they're going to move on him, right? They are going to move on Keir Starmer. There's absolutely no 2 ways about it. Now, the other thing, so we all know he's toast, apart from him. The bread's in the toaster. We just don't know when it's going to pop out and how black it's going to be, how burnt it's going to be, So there's that. The other one is family voting, right, which is against the law.
Yes.
When I was on
How has nothing happened about that?
Well, hopefully the Electoral Commission will take action on this because they have. James Cleverly's written to them. And when I was a Member of Parliament, I used to be on the Council of Europe. And one of my little jobs was to go around countries observing elections. So I've been to Russia, Ukraine, Armenia, you name it, right? I've looked. One of the things I used to look out for, family voting. Really? It was invariably, right, a male who would take in females into the polling station, invariably. And it would be them who would tell how to vote.
Right.
No. That's not how it should work, and it is against the law. Legislation was passed. I think it was Lord Robert Hayward was behind the legislation. And so the Electoral Commission need to get to grips with it. I'm amazed that the officers within the polling station did not take action. Observers aren't allowed, Mike, to intervene and say, stop that. They're there as observers.
Are they allowed to say to the officials?
Yes, they are.
There's something going on there.
Yes. Well, what they did was they took the unprecedented action of releasing information about family voting as soon as the polls were closed. Normally, they wait until a day or 2 days afterwards when a full report takes place. The fact that we need electoral monitors in the United Kingdom is a little worrying. You'd think that our democracy was rigorous enough that you wouldn't need international observers coming in. But nonetheless, I'm really pleased that they're there now because of these customs have been brought in from other countries. And it's got to be eradicated. You should not have family voting. It's against the law. And I do hope that by the time the next general election happens, or indeed the next by-election, the Electoral Commission will write to every returning officer to say, you have got to make absolutely certain there are sufficient people in every polling station to ensure that there's no family voting. And this is another reason, Mike, why I believe that postal vote should not be allowed on demand. Because clearly you can get, let's say there's 8 people living in a house, they all come in, then you've got no control over family voting.
And also there doesn't appear to be any great system of checks and balances in postal voting either, because you can register people and you will never know whether you've registered somebody that doesn't exist. As long as there's a registration, it's like somebody applying for a second driving licence. You get a driving and you go, well, there are 2 people living there, they're 2 different people, doesn't really matter, the pictures look a bit similar. If you can get the paperwork done, then you've got the vote, haven't you?
Well, Mike, it's a shame, really, that Wes Streeting doesn't talk to Yvette. Well, no, it's not Yvette Cooper, is it? It's Mahmood. He doesn't talk to her because he could tell her a little trick he's had, which is he's asked all the health authorities to work out if there are people on waiting lists who are dead and remove them in order to get the waiting lists down. Now, she could do exactly the same, which is to ensure that the people on the electoral register are actually still alive. Otherwise, you've got people who are, still getting postal votes who are dead. I mean, how many people? How many postal votes are going still into people's houses who are long gone? You know, it's
Alison
bonkers.
says this: the Greens had 9,000 postal votes. Absolutely, is that in Gorton and
Are they
Denton?
all ill?
I mean,
are they all ill?
Well, they won by 4,500. So I mean, there you go.
Yeah.
9,000 postal votes.
No, that is a spectacular number.
Yeah.
You're not going to get any action from this lot because
that's ridiculous.
Because this lot, don't forget, didn't even want people to show their identities when they wanted to go to the polling stations. Happens all around the world. And indeed, if you go to a Labour Party meeting where they have elections, they tell them, don't forget to bring your membership card to show that you are a member.
Yeah.
And yet they don't want that same rigorousness because they say that it frightens people off from voting. Well, what it does is it stops fraud voting.
But they want us all to have an ID card to walk around with, though. I mean, it's not, doesn't really do much.
Have they not flip-flopped on that,
I think they have. I can't remember now. I mean, I think we're up to about 19 flip-flops and U-turns, but God knows.
As I say, Mike, I think the one message that I've taken, and it's taken me a little while, 18 months, is that Keir Starmer, let's forget, he is not useless. He is now dangerous.
Yes.
He is dangerous to the economic welfare of the United Kingdom, to all the alliances that have been carefully built up. The special relationship has now been blown out of the water. I feel sorry for His Majesty. He's now going to go to the United States in July for the 250th anniversary of the War of Independence. And look at the opportunities that was going to be to cement the special relationship. We're now sending the King and Prince William to try and save the special relationship.
I mean, I think they'll probably manage to do that, actually, because Trump is a big fan of the royal family. And they're far more estimable characters, whatever you may think of them, than Starmer ever would be. And also, they're not having their strings pulled by anybody. You know, they're actually able to do what they want to do on their own, and they can go and represent Britain properly, as opposed to this kind of, broken, useless, hopeless individual called Keir Starmer, who doesn't seem to know what being British even means.
Well, it takes something, doesn't it, for the President of the United States to talk more highly of France and Germany than he now believes of the United Kingdom. I sent a message out via Twitter yesterday to say, this is not the United Kingdom. This is Keir Starmer. You're deeply disappointed, so are we.
Yeah, absolutely right. Nigel Evans, great to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Former Deputy Speaker of the House, of course, former long-term Tory MP for Ribble Valley, making a great deal of sense. And how awful is it that we're now represented by this useless bag of just nothingness known as Keir Starmer? Coming up, we've got not one, but two baronesses coming on the show today. We've got Kate Hoey coming in. We've got Claire Fox coming in as well. So we'll be talking to them about the rise of the Greens and all sorts of other stuff going on as well. Also, of course, we'll be telling you how to get your hands on a bumper sticker, one of these. We'll tell you exactly where to send your stamped address envelope, and we'll send you out one for free. Also, I guess it's time for us to get the news with Edward Hughes.
Good morning, all. Here's the news with me, Edward Hughes. The escalating war between the United States, Israel, and Iran dominates global headlines on its fifth day. Israel launched a fresh, broad wave of airstrikes on Iranian targets, while Iran continued retaliatory drone and missile attacks, including one near the US consulate in Dubai that sparked a fire, and strikes that reportedly destroyed advanced US radar systems. The death toll in Iran exceeds 780, with earlier strikes killing the supreme leader and other top officials, plus civilians in incidents like a school bombing. President Trump warned more US casualties are likely and stated the US can fight forever, while the Pentagon named fallen American troops from regional attacks. Oil prices have surged sharply amid threats to the Strait of Hormuz and halted energy exports, rattling global markets. US senators expressed fears of potential boots on the ground after briefings. Elsewhere, new US tariffs on Mexico, Canada, and China took effect, prompting retaliation and economic concerns. Remember to like and subscribe. Laters type.
Edward Hughes with the news. Thank you very much indeed. Now, I've got loads and loads of posts which I'm trying to open as we go. As I say, we've got two baronesses popping in. Baroness Hoey, Kate Hoey, former Labour MP, and of course Claire Fox, former MEP for the Brexit Party. And I've got this that's come in. It's a big card from Christine and Steve in Teesside. See you at Shepherd's Bush on the 6th of May. Yep, we can confirm that. That's the big show that we're doing, the live show we're doing, Shepherd's Bush Empire, the 6th of May. The Foo Fighters played there just the other day, so we'll be treading the same boards as Dave Grohl and those people that used to be in Nirvana. This is a lovely card that she sent in. It's a sort of a spoof of OK magazine. It says, world exclusive, the nation rejoices Mike Graham's plank of the week, MG's plonk as recommended, exclusive interview, 7 million views, onwards and upwards. Well, you know what? Thank you very much for that. You must have sent this a while ago because we're on 9.5 million at the moment, and we're probably going to hit 10 million, I would think, by the weekend, which will be extraordinary. Also, there's a picture of a heron. Get the look, a guide to MG. Amazing show, guest team, plonk, plank, you. And it says, thank you, Mike, Pooch and Charlotte. And somebody else? Who's that? Your show is the highlight of our day. Well, Christine and Stephen Teesside, thank you very much indeed. That's very kind of you. There's so many great things being sent in, I have to say, by so many of you to take part in this thing. And as I was saying, we have now got bumper stickers that you can apply to get. And we thought the best way for us to get those to you, because we did think about this and we did actually put our thinking caps on for quite some time to figure it out. Basically, we thought, what's the best way to get these out to people? And we think the best way is for you to send us a stamped addressed envelope. It has to be, I'm afraid, a C5 envelope, which is basically this kind of size, right? It's that kind of size. So you'll be able to fit the Mike Graham Show Home of Common Sense thing inside it like that, right? So what you do is you send a stamped addressed C5 style envelope to the Mike Graham Show, and it's PO Box 257, Battle, East Sussex, TN33 3FS. That's F for Freddy, S for Sugar, and we will send you one out for free, and you can stick it on the back of your car, the back of your tractor, the back of your motorcycle, or your even bicycle, if you have one. And we'll be very much looking forward to you all applying for that. And as I say, bear with us. We'll try and get them out to you as soon as we possibly can. Meanwhile, let's have a look quickly through the papers before we speak to Kate Hoey and indeed to Claire Fox. Front page of the Daily Mail has got a Prime Minister who Trump mocks as no Churchill and a Navy fleet stranded in port. We were just talking to Nigel Evans there about the state of not only the Department of Defence in this country, but the advice that Keir Starmer has been getting from military chiefs. Because the Daily Mail comment page says this: imagine if Sir Keir Starmer had been in charge when Argentina invaded the Falklands, or worse, in 1940 when Britain stood alone against Hitler. As Trump said last night, sitting in front of a bust of our greatest Prime Minister, Starmer is no Churchill. For once, the US President was putting it mildly. Starmer is Churchill, the nodding lapdog, says Matt. Yeah, exactly right. Not content with wrecking the economy, Starmer has now wrecked Britain's relationship with our oldest ally because he's in thrall to the international lawyer class, terrified of his own left-wing MPs and desperate to appease Muslim voters. The Sun goes with something similar. A scramble to Cyprus. Ship happens is the headline. As Trump blasts Keir as no Churchill, Prime Minister sends one destroyer to defend the RAF base. He sent helicopters with counter-drone capabilities to defend RAF Akrotiri days after an Iranian drone attack. And I mean, even when that happened, when the drone attack was launched against the British base in Cyprus, you know, we had John Healey, the Secretary of State for Defence, basically making out that it was an accident and they probably didn't mean to send it. They probably weren't really aiming it at Cyprus. No, probably not. No, because, you know, they're really nice people, the Iranians. We know they're nice people because we've got lots of people here in this country who support them. And in fact, they're going to be having commemorative, evenings over the course of the next several days to mourn his death. Absolutely extraordinary. Front page of the Times, Prime Minister is no Churchill, says Trump, as tensions rise. US President said he was not happy with the UK, and this is not Winston Churchill that we're dealing with. Well, you can say that again. I mean, he said the other day that he was disappointed in Keir Starmer, and as I said to Nigel Evans, well, how do you think we feel? Meanwhile, on the fourth day of the war, according to the Times, an Iranian missile hit a US airbase in Al Udeid in Qatar. No casualties were reported. Drones also hit the US embassy in the Saudi Arabian capital and near the US consulate in Dubai as Iranian attacks on Gulf states continued. The US moved to evacuate its citizens. Israeli forces also allegedly struck a meeting of Iran's Supreme Council as officials gathered to choose a successor to the late Ayatollah al-Khamenei. The conflict spread deeper into Lebanon as the Israeli military hit Beirut with more airstrikes and deployed troops in the south of the country as well. The Express goes with a slightly different story, looking at Rachel Reeves and her statement yesterday. 1 million more will pay tax on state pensions. That's great, isn't it? Panic at the pumps is what it says on the front page of the Daily Star. The Guardian goes with something completely different, as you might expect, but I can't find it at the moment. Where is it? No, not there. The Telegraph says Starmer is no Churchill. But they've also got a couple of other stories on the front page. Top BBC executive quits amid cost cutting. Well, that's always a start, isn't it? The BBC's chief operating officer has resigned, becoming the third senior executive departure at the broadcaster in 4 months, as the corporation pushes ahead with a cost-cutting drive. We've got Lee Tavaziva told staff she would step down in September to pursue new opportunities amid a restructuring of the product and technology divisions. The reorganisation comes after Tim Davey announced further savings of 10% in the next 3 years. The BBC is still at 6s and 7s. Nobody knows what's going on there. Netflix the other day were offering to actually operate the BBC as a streaming service for them. We shall see. Now, coming up, as I said, we haven't just got one Baroness for you. We've got two, which is, I think, never been done before. Kate Hoey's here. Very good morning to you, Kate. Welcome to the new world of the Mike Graham Show. Isn't it lovely? We've got a lot of herons. Our shiny new sign is being fixed behind us, so we can't see that. But before I come to you, have a look at this. This is Robert Jenrick talking yesterday about Rachel Reeves and her rather ridiculous budget statement.
So what did we learn in the spring statement? Well, that Rachel Reeves has been even more disastrous in managing the economy than we all thought. Growth has been downgraded again this year. Unemployment is going to reach a 10-year high. The benefits bill is going to balloon by £90 billion by 2030. And your taxes are just going to keep going up and up and up. Rachel Reeves spoke for 20 minutes, but she didn't have a single idea or policy to fix any of this. Why? Well, she's in la-la land. She actually thought that she was doing a good job, that her plan was working. Well, try telling that to the nearly 330,000 people who were in work when she took office and are now unemployed, or the millions of families and businesses that are suffocating under the weight of all her taxes. The truth is, Rachel Reeves is totally clueless. Britain is broken, and Britain needs reform.
Britain is broken and Britain needs reform. I mean, that's obviously going to be a phrase that you're going to hear a lot of over the course of the next several weeks, coming up to the May elections, of course. And Thursday, May the 7th, is the big sort of local election date when Keir Starmer, everybody thinks will finally have to step down. Baroness Kate Hoey's here. Kate, very good morning to you.
Welcome and welcome to my former constituency.
Is it? Of course it is, yeah, Lambeth.
Yes.
Yeah, marvellous. Did you miss it? I mean, did it brought back any memories of you walking around?
I was walking down a bit of the road there and 3 people stopped me and said,
really?
Oh, I said, no, I'm not the MP anymore.
Right, brilliant. I guess the first question to ask you is, you know, with the rise of the Green Party, we saw a YouGov poll yesterday saying the Green Party is now the second, you know, choice of people in this country after reform. Labour have kind of dropped down. You were a Labour MP in what you might regard as the golden years, I suppose, given what's going on now. Yeah. Do you think it's a reshaping of the sort of electoral college, if you like, or is it just a bit of a blip?
Well, I've seen, you know, blips before when we had the SDP way back. No, I'm hoping it's more than that. Yeah. I really do think we need a huge shake-up in politics. And, you know, you talk to anyone these days, and even sort of active members of either the Conservative Party or the Labour Party, and they are just so dispirited and fed up. And, you know, I do believe that there's a desire out there. People are fed up with politicians generally, fed up with politics. And there's a desire for something that's kind of new and shows that they know what they're doing or what they want to do. And I suppose that's where the Greens have come, you know, with their new leader recently. But of course, I think they're going to lose. I think the Greens are going to lose a lot of their, what I would call the traditional support. Say, you know, even in areas like this, you know, there used to be a Green vote because they were very, very, very keen on the environment, and that's now kind of gone
They
for
don't
the
really
green.
talk about the environment much, do they?
don't.
I mean, the only green thing about them is the Hamas bandana that they wear, which is not what I thought they had in mind. But I mean, the thing that's really I find most puzzling. I mean, I can see reform and the success that Nigel Farage is having. He's a very charismatic man. He's a very clever guy. He's got some very clever people around him. But Zach Polanski, I mean, he does not strike you, does he, as somebody who knows what he's doing or who has even an inkling of a sort of proper policy basket, if you like, of lots of different ideas.
Well, he certainly wouldn't be my choice for a lunch date or anything like that.
No.
He doesn't come across to me as anyone who's got sort of any kind of charm or appeal. But he obviously is appealing to that sort of younger element.
The younger people
think,
seem to like him, yeah.
But then, of course, Nigel has a growing, Nigel Farage has a growing younger group as well.
Yeah.
I think the Greens has been, they've specifically picked on this whole identity politics thing of getting the Muslim vote. And in that particular constituency, it will be interesting to see. I mean, there's likely to be another by-election fairly soon in that seat down, what was Jacob Rees-Mogg
in Somerset,
seat.
yeah.
And that,
I mean, I'm assuming that will have a different dynamic
exactly.
there, because it's not exactly a Muslim
And I
stronghold,
got elected in a by-election. By-elections are very different, and people use them to say all sorts of things to political parties. So I don't think we should assume that green surge will last. I think what is more interesting is whether reform can keep their very, very top position at the moment, and whether that will begin to drain away. But Labour is not, yesterday's budget and everything, not budget, the statement is not doing anything, and Labour is not. I have never genuinely, times particularly London taxis, you always got them having a go about politicians, but I have never in my years of being involved in politics seen such a genuine kind of hatred is probably the wrong word for Keir Starmer.
It is kind of visceral, though, isn't it? I mean, and it's almost as though he's upset
instant.
pretty much
out,
everyone.
there
isn't. Yeah, I mean, aside from the kind of obvious, slavishly, apparatchik-like people in Downing Street and various different MPs who kind of stick up for him, there isn't anyone that's got a good word to say about him, because the events of the last few days illustrates it well.
It's embarrassing.
I think. I mean he doesn't know what he's doing. I mean, we talked to Nigel Evans earlier. I mean, what are his defence advisors telling him? How on earth does he manage to arrive at a situation where, first of all, a British base gets attacked by an Iranian drone at the weekend, and the Labour government's excuse is, oh, well, they probably did it by accident. They probably weren't really targeting us. And you go, I mean, you're now bending over so far backwards to make it look as if, you don't want to upset the Iranians, that it looks ludicrous. Then they decide to send a ship 4 days later, which will take another 4 days to get there. It's
embarrassing, actually, to see our Prime Minister so feeble on the world stage. Whatever your position is on it, somehow he hasn't handled it even strongly in the other direction. He's kind of just been wishy-washy, and then you see other countries that don't have the historic sort of military presence and so on that we have, like Australia and Canada, who are not seen as raving right-wing countries, and they coming out much sooner and very much more quickly. And then you see Trump last night with the German head of Germany sitting having a cosy chat while we're kind of being
and saying we're not dealing with Winston Churchill. It is. I mean, I said this months ago before. I mean, because with every kind of week that passes, you think it can't get any worse, and then it does.
I agree.
I said months ago that it's kind of embarrassing now to be British, to be represented by this man Keir Starmer, who seems to parade around the world with his chest puffed up, hugging men and saying, we're a coalition of the willing and all this, and not really achieving anything at all.
No,
he hasn't achieved anything.
He obviously decided early on that he saw his kind of long-term image and legacy to be foreign affairs. I mean, he's been travelling an awful lot, far more than any new Prime Minister coming in has done in the last year or so. But it's completely failed.
But to no avail. I mean, he hasn't really done anything. He hasn't improved a lot of the Ukrainians, which he says he wants to do. He hasn't really given Britain a safe, border. We have now more, I think 2,200 is the number we've been told today that have arrived here since January. There's going to be more coming this year. We can't protect our own streets. Crime is rampant, even though Sadiq Khan keeps telling us it's going down. There's nothing good going on, is there?
Well, I think no, and I think the thing that is, I suppose, upsets me most because my views. I'm very pro-British, being from Northern Ireland, and I find the whole. It's sad that that there is so much. Gloom and doom, but there's also, I don't like to see our country being attacked,
right.
and I don't like people thinking, our country's finished, we'll never do, because it doesn't have to be like that. It really doesn't have to be like that, and I don't want to be in a position where I'm always having a go at our country.
No, sure. And there's lots of things that Britain is great at still, and there's lots of great things about Britain. But none of that has anything to do with Keir Starmer.
None of it, and he doesn't even try to show any kind of patriotism at all. Really.
No. In fact, he clearly makes him feel a bit unwell. He's not happy when. I mean, funnily enough, I don't know whether you saw this from last night. Have we got him speaking at the Iftar, Pooch? Because I think we were going to.
Oh, that was in.
But in Westminster Hall last night, there was an Iftar. Right now.
Yeah.
It's only relatively recently I discovered what Iftar was. It's a sort of a gathering of Muslim communities in one place to kind of celebrate Ramadan or whatever it is. And they've done one. They did one at Manchester United the other day, funnily enough, which struck me as a bit weird. But Starmer in this clip, if we can get it, looks about as comfortable as I've ever seen him, which is slightly worrying because when he's with
he's always
people,
looking quite scared.
Yeah, he looks kind of terrified when he's ever in a place with ordinary people because he's worried what they're going to ask him or what he's going to have to say to them. But he goes to this, it's essentially Muslim gathering, and he appears to be very much at home there. Did you say we got it?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's have a look.
But on Iran, I want to make clear the UK was not involved in the offensive strikes of the US and Israel, and that remains the case. As many of you
Yeah.
He says, I want to make it clear that the UK was not involved in the attacks.
Oh, he keeps repeating
Why
that,
does he
doesn't he?
keep
I mean,
saying
I think we've all picked
I think we
that
know
up by
that now. Sorry, Keir, just one question. Were we involved at all in the, the attacks? We know that we weren't, but why does he keep repeating it as if he's obsessed with sort of pushing this? And the Labour government seems to be doing a lot of this. They come out like Rachel Reeves yesterday to say that, we're turning a corner, the economy is improving, you're going to have more money. No, we're not. No, it isn't. It's all actual rubbish that they're talking.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think anyone, especially, her whole speech yesterday was as if there was nothing happening in the world, really, wasn't it? I mean, when we look at what's the current situation and the oil prices, and then, wouldn't it have been great if they'd come out and said, look, we realise now we've made a mistake about the North Sea oil.
Yeah.
We really shouldn't be continuing now. We've seen the work, we've been warned, but we didn't listen, and now we're going to go back. But the idea that we're not taking what we've got of our own natural resources or our own resources. It's just shocking.
Somebody sent me a tweet the other day. Said, if only we were sitting on a sort of a patch of land that was mineral rich with oil and gas, we'd be all right.
Yeah.
And of course we are. And instead of actually digging for it and drilling for it, we're taking it from Norway, who are literally next door, and buying it.
Buying it back. It's just, I think that is beginning to really, people beginning to understand that now because we've been pushing it. But we're in a situation where I think, politics is in a mess. Even in the Commons and in the Lords, it's all a bit depressing. We've just gone through a couple of bills recently, and in the Lords, and it's very depressing because even the Conservatives aren't sort of fighting back. I think the way they could be.
Yeah. Well, Baroness Fox is also here, your colleague. I don't know if we're going to try and do a double Baroness slot or something like that. But let me ask you about the Chagos Islands, because that's another thing that, again, up until this weekend was a massive story. Lord Kempsell, who we had on last week, actually has been very good on this. it looks to me as though it's not going to go through now, doesn't it? What do you think?
I'm hoping. I mean, obviously Trump has changed his mind various times. What I do not understand is, I mean, the Americans have a base on Diego Garcia, and how we could not have allowed them then, whether you agreed with their strike or not, to use the base on Diego Garcia, when that's been the whole kind of reason for the government pushing and pushing that we've got to protect it.
that Trump even accepted the fact that we could say no.
I think he was very badly briefed early on, and he didn't take a huge amount of interest in it because there were so many other things. I think he's now been engaged. There's been a lot of work done by Chagos supporters and politicians here to get influence through into the White House. But he does need, in order for it to be stopped, he does need to come out really strongly and actually say, this will not happen. I am not allowing this to happen.
Yes, I think he does. He does need to do that. Here she is.
Good morning.
Baroness Cox. See, I think I've never been in the same room as two baronesses before. I'm absolutely blown away by this. This is great.
So I'm hopeful. I'm really hopeful. They've withdrawn the bill from the Lords. It hasn't come back yet. Right. And we're hoping now that it won't come back. And of course, we're getting to the end of the session when everything falls. So there is this chance still. But what is beginning to get through to people is just how terribly we treated those people back in the 60s. Unbelievable.
Yes. And what was the reason for that?
That wasn't some past imperial thing. This was like, in our lifetime. And we literally...
And we made them live in Crawley, which is probably the worst thing of all, isn't it? The poor sods. I mean, didn't even give them somewhere nice to move to, But no, I mean, the thing that I found extraordinary as well was the speed with which the Starmer government moved when the Chagosians went back to their own island. And the Sun had a great headline. It was, British subjects go back to British property where they were born, only to be served with an eviction notice.
Yes.
Because basically they wanted to put them in prison for 3 years for landing perfectly legally on land that they belong to and that they have every right to live in.
And finding the graves, of their ancestors, of their not ancestors in the sense, but of their recent
their parents.
And it's just so.
And then of course Nigel Farage tries to get to Chagos, which was a great stunt. And in fact, Starmer's such an idiot. If he had any brains, he should have let him get there and then accuse him of just using it as a stunt. Instead of which, as somebody said to me, it's the only boat he's managed to stop is the one that Nigel Farage is on, trying to get to the Chagos Islands.
Yeah, I know.
Right?
Actually, Reform have been very, very strong on the Chagos Islands from the beginning, not just people who've jumped on the bandwagon more recently. So we'll just have to hope, and I hope that the common sense of the British public now, they're understanding it a bit more, is just going to make
I think that's right. I don't think a year ago most of us would have really known. I mean, funnily enough, when I used to first do overnight shows on TalkSport back in sort of 2010, 2011, there was one guy that used to ring up and talk about the Chagos Islands. I mean, I never really knew what he was talking about, but now everybody knows.
Everybody knows.
And nobody wants us to give them away.
Talking of sport there, can I just say how furious I was at the way that that football match was interrupted so that the Muslim players could
Maccabi
Tel
Aviv,
in the middle of
this the one in Leeds last
week. Oh, sorry, yes.
Stopped.
Shocking.
Oh, yeah, well, we actually did it on Plank. We did it on Plank of the Week because when the Football League, the Premier League announced
I paid a big amount of money to go to a Premier League match or a match that...
Well, I mean, Pooch was saying, I don't know if you saw it on Twitter, or it was you that actually said it. He said, during, maybe Boxing Day, maybe we should stop the football and they can all go to the sideline and have some Quality Street and a couple of tangerines. But it is ludicrous, isn't it? But this is I'm going to say it, and because I don't care. In other places you were like, the Islamification of every single part of our culture now. Claire, come on. I mean, it's mad, isn't it?
Well, I think it's more the absolute supine way that every institution, and that can be a football team, it can be a government, it can be anything, and you've just shown the Keir Starmer point, is, in many ways, and I'm not being funny, you can't blame Muslims for the fact that so many institutions are so desperate to bend over backward to keep Muslims happy. Do you see what I mean? So, obviously the football players would say, well, we'd like to stop because it's the end of Ramadan. And you just go, no, it's a football match.
Exactly.
We won't play you today.
Right. Also,
sit on the benches, and then you can go off when you want.
And if you're meant to be fasting, you don't stop to have some water because you're fasting.
No, but I mean, it was the end of fasting and it was for their welfare. All I'm saying is, it's a nonsense excuse.
It is.
All I'm saying is that it would be, exactly as you say, there are all sorts of religions that live side by side in this country, and we do not organise the whole of society around every single religious festival.
And neither should we.
But no, of course not.
And
but
for the
what
same
I'm
reason,
saying is that they would go out of their way in that instance, and I'm just making the point. It's an institutional problem. Because what you should say is, well, we're not going to kick you out the team because it's the end of Ramadan and you need to break your fast.
You just don't play today.
But you won't play today. You sit on the benches, go off and have a feast when you're ready, right?
Yeah.
That's fine. But to stop the match in that way, I mean, that just sums up. There's something deeply unhealthy about trying to ingratiate yourself and call the Muslim vote or just Muslims. And the problem then is, for ordinary Muslims, is they all become the target of great hostility because people just think, as you say, bloody hell, they're taking over. Whereas actually it's the institutions collapsing.
He literally now, every time he stands up, even if it's got nothing to do with foreign affairs, he says, oh, by the way, can I just mention that we weren't involved in that attack on Iran? And you go, yeah, you're right, thanks. When is he going to stop saying it? You know what I mean? And, it's all about what you said. It's appeasement of people who may not even want to be appeased, right?
No, I feel, sorry is the wrong word, but, you do think of the, as Claire said, the sort of, the average Muslim living in this constituency. I mean, how do they really want to find that the whole sort of institutional of the whole country is aimed at them and sort of trying to make, I don't think most Muslims, certainly in parts of the country where they're not in a large group together, just behave like normal, ordinary British people. Yes, because they are. Many of them really do feel British, but it's where there's been no integration and no attempt for particularly the women to learn English and to.
Well, I mean, is it not a particular problem to a particular part of the world? Mostly a very small part of Pakistan. Where an awful lot of the grooming gang problem comes from. Where an awful lot of the non-English speaking people coming here are a problem, and the kind of the ghettoisation, if you like, of some parts of Britain, some parts of cities like Birmingham, like Bradford, like Rochdale. They're all from the same valley in Pakistan.
No, exactly. I mean, that's one of the things that has become obvious in relation to immigration. Which is that obviously mass immigration has been problematic for reasons you've discussed endlessly on the show, but. The truth of the matter is that what probably none of us were aware of, and to a certain extent you kind of just look at it's British Asian community or it's Muslims or whatever, is that there's been, from particular geographic parts of the world, we've basically brought in people who have an attachment to clan that goes way beyond even an attachment to their religion. It's a kind of clan-like behaviour. And we know about that, and it's like widely known. I mean, I saw a Labour MP, Naz Shah, on Newsnight last night, but she was talking about how her family, she was abused in her family. Her mother was abused, rather, and she ended up in prison for killing her father. And she said, this is like a closed circuit. You know, I mean, you weren't allowed to talk about it. We know that from the grooming gangs. In other words, in particular communities, that is a problem. Integration would challenge it. But actually, multiculturalism as a policy, rather than people from different ethnicities living side by side, multiculturalism as a policy encouraged people to stay within that clan. So, for example, if you're a woman in that who wants to escape the patriarchal nastiness of some of that clan-like behaviour, you don't stand a chance. You don't stand a chance because your Labour council is saying, no, you stay where you are. It's all part of your cultural identity, love. Do you know what I mean?
And that same...
And we saw that just the idea that sort of family-friendly voting is okay because it's, they need help.
Yes.
These people.
And it's part of that culture, so that's okay then.
They want their own legal system too, almost in certain areas. And if you actually look at just that small concentrated groups that we could deal with, we could actually.
But do you guys? I mean, do you remember when this all began? Because it wasn't always like that. I remember when I was working. I first got my first job in journalism, actually working for an Asian magazine out in Hounslow, and we were working with an awful lot of what were then, I suppose, the Idi Amin sort of generation of mostly people from Gujarat who had gone to Africa to live in in where? Uganda, yeah. And they all come to Britain because Idi Amin had gone mad, and they all kind of opened shops and opened businesses, and their kids went to school,
worked hard.
and they became very British, and they worked very hard. Many of them ended up voting Conservative, funnily enough, because I always remember there was a fantastic Conservative advert which was put out, and it had this kind of Asian businessman with a briefcase and a suit, and it said, the Labour Party calls you black, we call you British. And it worked so well because, of course, they didn't want to be called black because they were, as far as they were concerned, they were from Kenya or they were from Uganda, you know, and they were from...
Well, Britain lost confidence in itself as offering anything. I mean, you just made the point, you know, the offer was to immigrants from anywhere that were coming, and by the way, we're not talking about such huge numbers that happen behind the backs of the British public, by the way, that's what we're talking about in terms of recently. But what used to happen was that when there was immigration, immigrants would come and say, brilliant, I'm in a modern Western society, I'm in Great Britain, they have... I want to be British. And that was the aspiration.
Exactly.
Britain said, this is Britain, would you like to be British? And they said, God, how brilliant, you know, it's a country that believes in democracy and free speech, and you can make money, you can make
fortune, have a business, all of that,
But when Britain hates itself,
well, that's
it says, why don't you come here and improve us?
Yes.
You bring with you, we're horrible because we're colonialist, nasty, right-wing. We're really sorry we colonised you. We're less sorry we colonised these Chagos Islands, but there we go. But anyway, we're really sorry about that. What can we learn from you? So we actually lost confidence in what we were asking people to integrate into.
Well, Rachel Reeves said it yesterday, didn't she? She said that one of the reasons the economy's got no growth in it is because the levels of migration have dropped off. And you go, sorry, actually the levels of migration haven't dropped off, one. Two, the reason that the net migration figure is down is because so many people have left. It's got nothing to do with who's coming in.
But I mean, Claire, you're right on that, because the Afro-Caribbean population in this area where I was the MP, I mean, the older generation were so proud to be British. They, you know, they loved the royal family. They felt very, very, you know, maybe as the younger generation, because they've been brought into this whole idea that, you know, we're an awful country, aren't. But definitely the older, you know, just like the Asian population that came in. So, you know, we need to recognise that there is a problem, but it could be challenged and it could be faced if we faced up to it.
One of the things that's really shocking to me is that when we say you need to integrate now, you have to think. You'd think that integration would mean that you go to school, then you go to university, and all the rest of it. The problem is you go to university.
And it's full of people
who basically hate Britain, hate and basically talk about white privilege the whole time. And you flatter and cajole young second-generation immigrants, you know, from immigrant families, second-generation British kids, and you basically say to them, being a British young person is not sufficient, but we would like to emphasise that we will recognise the important contribution you make as a young Muslim woman, or as a young Afro-Caribbean woman, as a young black,
but
and
we just
white
like
privilege
ourselves.
is a problem, and therefore you can integrate by joining the decolonise the university brigade and going on a Gaza march. I mean, that's almost like what the British establishment are selling to people. And so as a consequence, we've got this disaster, which is there's no one fighting for what it means to be British. To the people we want them to integrate into.
And if you do it, you're accused of being a racist or some kind of, you know, colonialist, horrible individual, right-wing maniac. Speaking of which is not to link it to your organisation, but the Battle of Ideas coming up in Manchester, I think, is it soon?
Yeah, we've got on Saturday, in fact.
Oh, is it Saturday?
We're off to Manchester for a Battle of Ideas North.
I was going to say I might pop up there, but I didn't realise it was Saturday because I don't think I can do it.
Right, yeah. So, it's just, I mean, we obviously have the big Battle of Ideas Festival in London, which we both at various times been involved in, and that's like a very big affair. But perfectly reasonably, a lot of people said to us, you know, come north.
Come north.
And so we've got a small one-day event, but, you know, it's very interesting about how politics changes, because I'm doing the opening session, which is... there we go. Nice leaflet. There we go. Saturday 7th. But anyway, we've got... the opening keynote is something like, from Greenland to Brexit Britain, you know, the issues around sovereignty. And you think, Greenland, we've all forgotten bloody Greenland. So we've had to kind of redo the leaflet with a post-Iran ... from Greenland. I mean, the issue is sovereignty, and that's the opening one. Yeah. But then we've got big discussion about whether the North can be the economic renaissance, Andy Burnham and all the rest of it. Yeah. We've got a discussion on post the Supreme Court. Right. Why can't we solve the difference between gender identity and sex, despite the fact the law is qualified? Yeah. What is holding it back? Why are the government not going down that route?
Why are so many public sector organisations in particular just ignoring the law and getting away with it?
Exactly. And then we've got Island of Strangers, some of the points about community cohesion. So obviously the by-election will be part of that. And then we've got an interesting one, which is we're finishing, of course, on a big debate on free speech. We call it free speech emergency because I still think there is one. In fact, it's creepingly getting worse. But we have got one on young people, you know, being attracted to extremes in politics. And we've got the young people organising the session. We've got the various voices sort of talking about that. But I think that is interesting from the point of view of the Green vote.
I was going to ask you what you make of the Green sort of, you know, renaissance, if you like, from, you know, it's moved from, as Kate was saying, kind of slightly muesli, you know, knitted jumpers to suddenly, you know, pro-Hamas, pro-Iran, pro-Gaza.
Well, in fact, I've just been shown something, which is that one of the big motions at their forthcoming conference is to actually explicitly call themselves an anti-Zionist party. And so their sort of obsession with hatred with completely exploiting, but I think it's genuine, sadly. Their hatred of Israel being the most important thing. It obviously explains a lot that happened in the by-election. But I think the young people being attracted to them, I mean, first of all, you know, your party is imploded. The Jeremy Corbyn.
They never really got off the ground, did it?
No, so they're attracting that. I think very disconcerting for me is that whilst I'm very keen for young people to understand that there is an alternative to Labour and Tory as the mainstream parties, and that's a widespread phenomenon, the rejection of those parties which are just not fit for purpose anymore.
Do you think they're finished?
I think it will be very I think that they'll stagger on, but they're zombies. I can't see either of them being in government for a very, very long time. But obviously we've got a long way to go. But there's nothing there. They've got no base, both of them. But what I was going to say was that it's horrible the way that one thing that's happened politically is a negative anyone but reform. And I think that a lot of young people are now, and I mean, reform have got a real problem because reform are an alternative, and I'm not a cheerleader by any stretch, but reform are an alternative that at least is based on solid ground, which is millions of people who identify with Britain, who believe in sovereignty and self-determination, and also want to have their voices heard. And they've had time to kind of start developing values, whatever, about policies. The problem with the anyone but reform youth vote that's going to the Greens is that it's entirely negative. It's entirely based on demonising, actually, a large section of the British working class. And it's based on a very nihilistic and actually a kind of bigoted view of the kind of people who will vote reform. So they're described as racist, fascists.
It's a snobbish
thing. It's a hope, not hate. A real distaste. That's a very good way of explaining it. It's a real sort of like, oh, we don't want those people in. But that's going to cause electorally problems for reform. We saw it in Caerphilly. If that youth vote... So it's a very negative way of stirring up youth activism, that the only thing they're doing is voting for somebody that's not them.
Well, that seems to me to be the thing that reform we've got to worry about the most. One, that people will just gang up on them and try and stop them getting out wherever. But also, two, finding enough people who are decent enough to stand in all of the various, you know, constituencies that they're going to need to find candidates.
Yes, and then they're bound to get somebody who's, you know, has done something in the past.
There will be,
disturbed. The media will go.
Well, I know they've got a massive vetting operation now.
But
much better even despite having that, you know, councillors slip through the net. You know, you get some guy who's, you know, had a picture done in a Nazi uniform. You know, you're just never going to get away from that.
I mean, obviously, to a certain extent, I'm not sure what your view is going to think of this, but the truth of the matter is that in some ways Restore have done a good job on vetting for reform, which is the kind of Rupert Lowe vehicle, seems to have attracted quite a number of people who might have been the kind of people that vetting would have found out.
Well,
So,
I think, again, for the same reason that Reform have always said we don't want anything to do with Tommy Robinson, you know, that helps them in a way, doesn't it? Because although some people might go, although you just like the Tories, it kind of separates them out. It means there's some people over there who are more right-wing.
I mean, the thing about Reform is, I just to say, is that they've got a real challenge. I mean, they've got to find candidates, but they also, and I think that we all know this, but Kate and I often talk about this kind of thing, which is running a country's not an easy thing to do, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm a great sort of critic, and I can stand there and I can, you know,
but you don't want to be the Secretary of State.
But no one's going to ask me to provide energy to the nation's houses, right? Or in fact, organise defence, or actually understand how things work.
But isn't that part of the problem?
And they are literally in a position where they could be in power.
Yeah.
So they've got to get serious,
But
right?
they can't be any worse than this lot, for
No,
because
I'm enthusiastically hoping that something happens. All I'm saying is, for those people who sort of say, why can't they? It's like they've got to concentrate on the possibility they could be running the country.
I think. I mean, I'm not a. You know, I don't know every detail of what Reform's doing behind the scenes, but I think they are beginning to think about that a lot more, and get in some good people. But you know, the awful thing will be if Reform get in and then they kind of make a mess of it, because then we might as well all go home.
But all I'm saying is I'm commending them in a way for
thinking.
I feel as though they've grown up quite a lot. That's what I'm trying to say. They realise themselves that they've got to be in a different situation.
And they've also, Nigel Farage has obviously also realised that he does need more of a team around him.
Yes, he can't do
He can't
everything.
just do all of it.
Yeah,
and I know that's difficult for people sometimes to let go of that kind of, you know, the reins of power. But which also brings me back to one of the reasons why perhaps the Tory party have kind of had everybody's faith knocked out of them, and the Labour Party are now doing the same, is because it feels as though at the moment in Britain, and I know that you don't want to talk it down, nothing really works. You know, like if you look at the Home Office doesn't seem to work. You know, the Foreign Office doesn't seem to work. The Defence now department doesn't seem to work. They can't. I mean, I don't know what they've been telling Keir Starmer, but you know, we're woefully unprepared for anything. You know, we were talking about Dubai earlier on in the day, and they've got this amazing kind of defence system, this Iron Dome type thing. We've got nothing.
No.
We've literally got one ship, which is sitting in the Channel. It's currently on its way to Cyprus. It's going to take 4 days to get there. 2 helicopters. You know, so you hope that they've got enough fuel to put them up in the air. You know, and you just think, if somebody did launch an attack on Britain, what would we do? Nothing.
I know. Look, we're run by technocrats. We're no good at being technocrats. I mean, the one thing I thought when Keir Starmer came in was, you know, because there'd been quite a lot of drama with the Tories, and you think, oh, well, I suppose at least he's a technocrat. He might kind of like boring, but he'll be competent. I mean, the most incompetent people who talk about competence, I mean, their lack of ability in relation to governance indicates something very important, which is they really want, which I think is what's happened to politics in general, which is politics have been gutted of any depth or substance or the kind of people who would actually, or belief or anything. So you've got these kind of like robots, but they're not even good at, that's what I'm saying, they're not good at even being robots. They just sound like robots, but you do think actually the robots might actually fix the defence situation. They might actually make something work. It's like student politics. That's really what it reminds me of. It really reminds me of going to an NUS conference and these people kind of endlessly passing motions and so much of it's performative.
Yeah, but I also think we've got a civil service that has actually lost its way completely in terms of both.
And why is that, do you think?
Well, I remember, I think when we left the EU, I think the civil servants really did miss the fact that they could always excuse everything by blaming Brussels had said this and they had to do it. And I think they missed that sort of being able to, get Brussels to tell them. But I mean, I do think they've become more biased, or I used to feel, I remember defending years ago our system against the American system, where they get rid of everybody when there's a new president, and thinking, it's good, we've got people who are quite prepared to work for whatever political party people have elected. And that seems to have changed. Right. You do feel they're more political.
Oh, they very much are. Yeah, there's no question about that, because I can't remember which union it was, but one of the civil service unions said, if Reform get in, we're all going to walk out.
Yeah, I mean,
and you go, well, sorry, that's not part of the remit. You've got to do what you've got to do.
Well, we've had a good example of both the kind of what people call the uni party and the civil service, which is, before he left office, Rishi Sunak came up with this ridiculous idea of a generational smoking ban, which after you're born on a certain age, you won't be able to buy cigarettes. Which means at some point in the future, a 43-year-old will be legal, and a 40. Somebody born the day before who's 42 won't be. I mean, God knows what's going to happen, by the way, in the corner shop when you're trying to check the age. Anyway, you've got that.
Well, the other bit you didn't get is that everybody who's now still smoking is actually buying bootleg cigarettes anyway.
No, exactly.
For about £5.
So, but the thing was that Rishi Sunak comes up with this absolutely bonkers idea. Because civil servants, somewhere in the Department of Health, they had this mad idea that no one else had been foolish enough to accept, and he wanted a kind of, I'm going to save lives, and I'm going to stop people from dying of cancer. This is going to be like my legacy. Right. The thing is, he then called the election too early, so the bill dropped. Yeah. So everyone goes, thank goodness for that. What a great relief, right? Guess what? One of the bills that the Labour Party picked up. So it's back. We've just passed it. So we've just been through the Lords. But this is what I wanted to say was, at the Lords, during committee, a stage of the bill, at least the Tories started saying, look, it was very embarrassing we brought this in the first time, but we're at least going to fight it now. And then right at the end, we just watched it, Kate and I. The Tories just said, OK, we agree with the bill, right? Now, the backbenchers weren't happy, but the front bench. And it was a really important reminder, because I can like Kemi Badenoch, and I can think she's saying some good things, and because we're in opposition, sometimes the Tories are the kind of people that you're going to be agreeing with on Chagos or on whatever. And then when I see them just absolutely gutless, but that was partly caused by civil servants who said, here, Minister, I've got a bill to sell you. And that's honestly what the Labour government is like. They are literally delivering bills that some civil servant have said, this is my hobby horse, can I give it to you? And they buy it hook, line and sinker.
And that seems to have been what was the problem at the beginning of their government, wasn't it? Because all these civil servants, from what I'm told, turned up with ideas for the Treasury, which they'd been giving to people in government for years and always being rebuffed. But except Labour just went, oh, all right, then we'll do that.
Because we haven't got any of our own ideas. We haven't got any principle.
And yet they had all that time to prepare. They knew they were going to be in government. We knew that.
Well, the great summation for me was Sue Gray, wasn't she? I mean, she was brought in to run the first 100 days. She only lasted 93. And you go, well, so you didn't have to give your own plan for the first 100 days. It's just been absolutely
She's now
ridiculous.
in the House of Lords. I haven't seen her around much.
No, she's in the House of Lords. She doesn't speak often, does she?
No.
She's kind of...
That's probably a good thing.
But everyone's in the House of Lords at the moment. I mean, it's like...
It's very interesting. There's a lot of new Labour women have come in more recently.
Well, Jackie Smith's in there,
a lot
isn't
of them.
Oh, she's effective, though.
And they're suddenly finding that they have to work. They hadn't thought, I think, many of them, that they were going to have to be there till late at night, because we have different hours from the Commons and we work quite late.
Yes.
And I think they're finding that it's not just their title.
It's a kind of it's a voting fodder question. They've literally brought people in. They don't necessarily anticipate that they're going to be joining in the conversation. They're not there as independent thinkers.
Right.
And by any stretch.
And what's happened to Keir Starmer's great reform of the House of Lords, by the way?
Well, they are getting rid of the hereditaries.
Well, there's only 99 of them left,
the bill has to come back from the Commons, so it's still not actually legal yet. But and it is. I would have been very happy just for every time a hereditary died that you didn't replace them. And that would have been. But apparently that was agreed. That was they wanted that some years ago, and the Tories didn't accept it. So now Labour is saying, well, we can't possibly do that. So they're going to get rid of them all at the end of this session.
Okay.
If the bill comes back.
This session being what, till Easter?
May.
Oh, really? Okay.
So they could all be going. I mean, it's been vindictive and nasty and unpleasant. And it's not that, I mean, we two, of all people, do not support the hereditary principle. I mean, we don't think that bloodline makes you superior. But on the other hand, they could have handled this with some class, and they certainly did not.
Very, very hard.
But also kind of a bizarre thing that has happened anyway, because Tony Blair was meant to get rid of them all, and then they somehow ended up keeping 99. Why did that happen?
No, exactly. That was bonkers. But in your general point on reform, absolutely the House of Lords should be reformed. There's all sorts of things that you can say. The problem is that it's been done in bad faith. So they went for the hereditary peers. They're now potentially talking about saying that you have to retire at 80, which of course doesn't work, because the House of Lords is full of people who are 80 plus, who are actually really brilliant or active. And some of the people who are 40, when they brought in young people, are absolutely hopeless, numpties who sit there nodding things through. So why would that make any difference? The main thing is that there's a problem constitutionally of an unelected second chamber,
But the Labour Party aren't serious about tackling it. They're not really going to reform it. So what they've done is said they've got more than us, so we're going to stuff it full.
Yeah.
Now, in the last week, they've had to, 3 or 4 of them have had to retire, and I don't just mean Mandelson, because they didn't bother doing vetting of the people they brought in.
Right.
So 3 peers over the weekend were forced.
So is this
lost
other
the
Labour
Labour
guy,
whip.
the other Labour guy who was friends with the paedophiles, he gone as well then?
Well, he's had the Labour whip. I mean, you wouldn't come in, would you? He's had the Labour whip removed. But there's another one. Somebody who ran Newcastle further education colleges. He was forced to resign from his job in disgrace, and now it's come. Now it's come up that he was kind of spending quite a lot of time philandering rather than working. But they offered him a peerage. Another one, Anne Lim, who didn't have a PhD. She claimed she did. And she didn't. But then she's been running a charity where people seem to have made an awful lot of money when they sold off the charity. She's also, and you think, oh my God, even basic vetting. I mean, what you should have done, which is what most people do, is Google.
Well, I was going to say, Google will be your friend.
The thing to say is, because we were both in, while there was still a Conservative government for the last, for about nearly 2 years of being in the Peers, and the government got defeated regularly. So the whole idea that somehow it's a huge Tory majority, the crossbenchers are crucial. The Lib Dems have got far more than, in a sense, their voting.
They shouldn't have as many as they have.
So, it's just ridiculous that Labour think they can absolutely flood people and get a majority, because it doesn't work like that.
And that's not how it should work, really, is it?
Not
They
at
shouldn't even want it to work like that. That's the problem. Sharon Davis, we've had on a couple of times. And she's great. She's great.
Good that she's come in.
Yeah.
Look,
those are the kind of people you want.
There's some great people in the House of Lords, many more than people might think. Of the new people, Sharon Davis is one of the most exciting people. There's all sorts of people, right? And by the way, on all the benches, it's not just on one side. But I think that Kate's really right.
You're a lot more sensible.
But we're very lucky because we're now what's called non-affiliated.
Non-affiliated, so we can be the normal kids on the back.
Would you do a kind of Jackie Smith if you were asked to by Nigel Farage in a reform government? Would you go in and be a minister of some kind or another?
I helped Boris when he was mayor.
Yes,
because
I remember,
the grassroots sports stuff, which was good. Now I'm getting too old.
That's the Anne Widdecombe answer.
That's absolutely not true. That she's getting too old, by the way.
No, I don't agree with that either. No. I think they'll come for you, to be honest. And maybe you as well.
Honestly, I'm enjoying.
Have you burned the old bridges?
Claire and I feel very similar. That we like being. Well, we are independent.
Yeah.
We like that.
Me too.
But we're happy to work with people who believe in things.
Case basis.
Genuinely, we will be helpful in situations where we think that the most important thing is politically, or for the, as they say, for the country. But sorting out the mess that we're in. I think that we can safely say that we will do what we can, right? And we won't be sectarian about it and say we're not working with you or be. And I would say that about anyone, any party.
But I think when
reform are going to have to get a lot of people in the House of Lords, and they won't know what they're doing. And therefore, there will be those of us in the House of Lords who will be able to say, well, we could at least show you,
and there's more
a few of the
like
rules, right?
There's more than us who think like that. There's a few others.
That's good. Well, it's been delightful having you both here. It's been like just being out for lunch or something without the food. It's been fantastic. I had to check myself that we're actually broadcasting it, which is brilliant, which is what we love about this. Some comments, chuck them up before we go, shall we? Honestly, you don't see a Baroness for ages, then two come along together from OC2, very good. And Mike and the Baroness could be a group, says South London Sarah. Thank you very much. This is a regular thing, double Baroness segment. We could have discovered something here, maybe. And also, we were asking earlier if people want to come along to the Battle of Ideas in Manchester. What's the website?
Yeah, it's battleofideas.org.uk. Right. I have to say, I think that we're almost on a waiting list, but we are selling tickets on the day.
Okay.
But look at it. If you like the programme, turn up. That's the story.
There you go.
And keep your eye on us and so on.
There is. The Baroness should be on the live show. We're doing a live show in Shepherd's Bush on May the 6th, right before the elections. If you happen to be in town, we might get you on. Have a Baroness section. Shall we finish up with a dog? Pooch's Pooch. We do this because at the end of a very kind of serious show, we like to make people smile, and so we get a dog video up. I don't know which one we've got today. Which have we got?
It is actually
Beautiful.
smiling, that dog.
It is. It's amazing. Anyway, listen, Claire Fox, Kate Hoey, thank you so much. Lovely to see you both. We'll see you both again soon, I'm sure. We'll be back tomorrow morning from 7 with more madness and more dogs and probably no baronesses tomorrow. Sorry. We'll see you then.